Mm-hmm. Good morning. Hi, chat room. How are you? All right, we'll be getting started here in just a moment. Just going over my stories. And by stories, I mean what we're going to be talking about today, not soap operas. Hi. All right. Look at this. Carl, how are you? Welcome back, TL. Rocky Mountain. Today is VJ Day. I do not have gold pants on today. I think it's just the weird lighting in this place. Oddly enough. It's like weirdly green. I don't know why everything's green. I don't understand. It's very dark in here. It's very Seattle this morning. I am spitting distance from Canada, but I would never, or Canada as we like to call it. Look at that. Almost a daily occurrence. We should do this more often. It's a little weird. Okay. Excuse me. Thank you. It was good. I always if I tickle the end of my nose, it makes me sneeze again and gets the other one out of the way. So I literally just, if you'll ever see those in the chat room, if I ever sneeze, you'll see me do this with my finger because it'll make me sneeze again right away. Dun dun dun. Shows were great last night, and quite frankly, I'm vocally a little worn out from them, which should, is a lesson I have yet to learn. I don't know what the deal is. Thank you. Hello from Seattle, everybody. I'm up in the great Northwest, surrounded by Google and Amazon and trucks full of easily distributable Chinese versions of American inventions that can be in your house in as little as 12 hours in some cases. So it's nice to be right here in the hub of things. I'm doing shows up here, of course, at Parlor Live in Bellevue, one of my favorite venues and one of my favorite parts of the country. It's always fascinating to be up here because, on the one hand, it is a very politically active city. They're very aware, but Seattle itself is part of a greater state that is much closer to the Bible Belt and the Rust Belt as you might think, as sort of odd as the experience of that most Seattle people have in terms of what their kind of daily educational, philosophical, musical, the fact that they have libraries, like all their experiences in a lot of ways are so different from the people from East Washington State. That you can really get an interesting picture of, Trump voter and liberal living together in some ways, and in this particular, time period or whatever. There is, for maybe some of you that don't know, if you've never been up here, about an hour and a half. I'm getting a little Rachel Maddow about this when I'm setting up this whole backstory, but about an hour and a half due east of Seattle is a little town, forget the name. I've done stand-up there as well. But their whole industry is the destruction of spent and unused munitions. So they have a little, like an old mine that the town used to be built around that went empty, and now they use it to blow old stuff up. So they will take your, like old tank shells and, bullets that I guess have passed their expiration date, like milk, and cluster bombs and other stuff that can't be trusted to blow up when they're supposed to, like they're supposed to. And those things get trucked or flown into that little town. They drive them into that mine and blow them up deep in the mountain. They just let them explode. And that's the whole industry of that town. And needless to say, it's kind of low on tourist dollars. So when I had to stay there in the hotel to perform a couple years ago, I was the only one there. And the hotel itself looked like something from the DMZ between South Korea and North Korea. It had pockmarks on the outside of it from the occasional accident where these, they're taking these shells up and the truck itself blew up years ago. It's pretty fascinating. But these people live and operate in this city, and they, there's no way clean coal is going to save them from a job of blowing up stuff with great regularity, right? So that being said, for me, it's always fascinating to see, people intermingling who, they have to come into Seattle for work or to do some other stuff, and then they go out and they're kind of confused by the environment that they're in, and touring around the country. I'll be in Huntsville, Alabama in a couple weeks. Couldn't be more different than Seattle. But what I am seeing that's a distinct difference from dates I did earlier in the year where I was touring around the country, before the summer, especially, April and May, is that the strong defense of Trump almost bristling with sort of a personal level of ego that was present in the beginning of the year has now been replaced in these places and by the people living in those places by an eye roll. The vast majority of the Trump supporters that I will run into who are at a show, who have a deal with and by the way, Carl in our chat room just brought up that I should go to the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. Already on the list. Can't wait. And I also want to thank ACT and Milkman Norm for their super chats right out of the gate. Thank you guys so much. But going to these places, I'm curious once I go to Huntsville, after the experience that they have had, looking at Texas and Louisiana, looking at the response there. The president is going to Texas today for a do-over, where he will have very scripted events. This visit is the equivalent of a teleprompter speech. He messed it up the first time, didn't meet any survivors, barely went outside, said he went and saw firsthand damage, didn't, watched it all on a weather map, talked about his crowd size, and flew away. That's the real Donald Trump visit. Now they will have the, oops, we messed up, we should go have a more stately version of events. Maybe we should just copy, they're like doing a cover album of Mike Pence moments. Watch him go and recreate what Mike Pence did over this afternoon. But most of this stuff, the president is alleged to be increasingly frustrated with his circumstance, with General Kelly making him do stupid things like go back to Texas and appear presidential. And, and that's not going to change anytime soon. And the average Trump voter that I run into in these circumstances seems very much to be changing their response from hey man, America first, we're going to do this, to, ugh, I wish you'd stop tweeting. Their fallback is, if you just stop tweeting, if you would just stop impulsively speaking, everything will be okay. That if General Kelly could just manage every word out of his mouth and make him stop tweeting, everything's going to be fine. And with the news that Robert Mueller has a copy of a letter that Trump wanted to send to James Comey to explain why he was firing him, before he roped in Rod Rosenstein and basically assistants at the Justice Department, before he could do that, he had written his own kind of standard, Trump letter, his Trump reasoning. But the guy who said, you're fired for a living, somehow can't bring himself to fire anyone. Scaramucci fired Spicer, Kelly fired Bannon and Gorka, and Trump had to basically rope in Rosenstein in a letter and make him draft up the reasonings for the firing, which has always been particularly peculiar, to me. So he wrote this letter, his initial attempt, Mr. You're Fired, drafted up a letter that he was going to send to James Comey, and apparently his lawyers got a look at it and said, you can't send this. It'll get you in legal trouble. So on the advice of counsel, who told him, your reasonings for firing James Comey that you have stated in this letter are legally problematic and could get you in a lot of trouble, and basically unveil all the reasons why you were firing him. That a special prosecutor or a Senate committee or a House Select Committee on Intelligence that starts looking into America and, like the Trump and Russia experience and your ongoing relationship with them, will look at this letter as evidence. Don't send it. And so he didn't. He, on advice of counsel, he had somebody else do his dirty work, and Rod Rosenstein drafted up the letter that was the reasoning for him firing him on paper, and then he couldn't help himself. He went on and spoke to Lester Holt, and he went, at the moment, I thought to myself, I thought this whole Russia-Trump thing was, a fake story, so I fired him anyway. So he couldn't help himself, and he fired Comey based entirely on that. This whole Russia-Trump thing is a fake story, so I fired him. And from that, he totally undermined the letter that he got or whatever. Well, it turns out that the letter that he was going to send is effectively a written version of that. And his lawyers were quoted in this story as the letter, drafted in May, was met with opposition by Don McGahn, the White House counsel, who believed that, and this is my favorite part of the whole thing, this is my favorite quote, its angry, meandering tone was problematic. Its angry, meandering tone was problematic. So basically, it's like all of his tweet storms and his off-the-cuff remarks and his boring speeches that drag on, that drive people crazy. That's awesome. In our super chat, Julie just tipped in Hungarian money. I'm going to get in some sort of weird legal trouble for accepting Hungarian forints. Yeah. and I'm sorry, I thank you in Hungarian, but I only know Hungarian swear words. So, anyways, so Szia, which is how you say hello, it's almost kind of like their version of Hungarian, like Hungarian's version of Hawaiian. You know, Szia means hello and goodbye. See ya. But anyways, so my favorite tone of this, we'll talk about this after the break. We have to take a break. But its angry, meandering tone was trouble. Was real trouble for Don McGahn, his lawyer, and that kept him from sending it. Unfortunately for Trump, because all things exist in the digital realm and subpoenas being what they are, Mueller has a copy of that letter now, even though he didn't send it. And that is the single biggest piece of evidence gathering that the obstruction of justice story would need to move forward. And that doesn't even get us into Trump and Kushner's money problems. We'll be back after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT820.com. And, of course, you can watch it halsparks.tv, live streaming from my Seattle hotel room. It's worth a watch. We'll be back. I forgot to put the Do Not Disturb on my room, so I'm going to go do that on the door so that the maids don't try to clean the room in the middle of the show and kind of come in. Hello? Hello? There you go. Okay, now we're safe. You're welcome. I did make the bed. That's right. Yeah. So let me check out the Twitter, the Twitter feed. Tweeting. Does anyone tweet? Tweeting. There we go. We're good. Want to nap now. So tired. Well, and the bed's not making it any easier because people just feel like they could crawl over and conk out. MAGA caps or brain sucking device. I think there's something in the red dye in them that is some sort of like he got it from Russian special ops. Let's see. We're such a distraction to Hal. A miracle and can hold the show together. This is true because I want to talk to you guys and I want to mention what you're talking about or what are those kind of things. But if you're ahead of the point I'm making, it's hard to like scroll back and Mega Worldwide beats the daylights out of MAGA Worldwide. That's not a bad idea. I'll have a I should have a hat made that's red that says Mega. Oh, and have it made in America. Oh, and it should be blue. So with white lettering, so my mom can wear it for Kentucky games. She'd be so proud. Thank you, Lady B. And everyone, hello in the chat. Say hi to Lady B. She's shy. We had to talk about her shyness this morning. We'll try to bring her out of her shell over time. It'll be good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Trump he has Rod Rosenstein draft his letter. We're firing him because Hillary was treated so unfairly. So unfairly. No good. And don't ask me, ask Rod Rosenstein. He sent the letter. I never even read it before he sent it, but I agree with it, but I don't need it. And then he goes on Lester Holt and tells Lester, basically spills the beans completely. And and it tells us, I fired him because of the Russia thing. It was bugging me. Then he tells the Russians in his meeting with them that he got rid of Comey, who was a whack job, and it took the pressure off him about Russia, which, after finding out this letter had a, quote, angry, meandering tone, makes one wonder if he called him a whack job in the letter, which is entirely possible, knowing Trump at this point. The post story of it, he calls, sorry, it was a nut job. He called him a nut job, which, is a lovely children's film. My son and his grandmother love watching Nut Job. I'm just saying, in no relation. Apparently the New York Times has not seen a copy of Trump's letter, which was drafted at the urging of Mr. Trump during a pivotal weekend in May at the president's private golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. Apparently, the long Bedminster weekend began late Thursday, May 4th, when Mr. Trump arrived by helicopter, joined by his trio of advisors, his daughter Ivanka, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, which I would push back on calling them advisors, because nothing that they apparently think is important has made any headway. This idea that Jared and Ivanka somehow have been in any way functional in driving the narrative of their father/father-in-law's White House, or moving the ball forward on causes they are somehow feel are important to them, is nonsense. As a matter of fact, literally there is a direct line to be drawn between, I believe, between Trump not being able to say a bad word about the white supremacists and the Nazis until being forced to, and him sending Jared to Israel to deal with Middle East peace, reeks of his assignment of Ben Carson to HUD. This idea that this is the only black guy I know, and isn't HUD a black thing, so I'll put him in charge of that. And I know a Jew, I'll send him to Israel to take care of Middle East peace. Under any normal circumstance, I would find it hard to move to that belief about this. But the president's linear, almost crayon-like connective logic seems to reek of this kind of stuff. And it is completely clear that that's about as much as he thinks this stuff through. So, of course, he sent Jared, because he's Jewish, to the Middle East to deal with Middle East peace, because it's not like Trump knows a Palestinian or an Arab human being. He didn't, if you'll notice, didn't send, I know everybody, I know all the best people. One of my Saudi prince friends who I asked for a bailout at one point, I could send him and Jared. They'll both go talk about it. They'll fix it together. No, he sent Jared. So these people, the idea that the New York Times quotes that his trio of advisors, Ivanka, Jared, and Stephen Miller, which I absolutely believe is an advisor, someone who absolutely whispers in his ear like Gary Oldman and Dracula, be careful how you cut yourself. I believe Stephen Miller has advised the president. I believe he has drafted statements. I believe he has eliminated key phrases, like mentioning the Jews in a statement on Holocaust Remembrance Day. That sounds like a piece of advice that he would give. And by the way, thanks Amos and Billy and Natalie for adding to the super chat. That was super awesome. Thank you. Amazing. Everybody's off to it must be holiday season or something. End of the summer, whatever. It's the Labor Day, and they know I'm laboring on Labor Day weekend, so they're being particularly kind. But so this letter came about because golf was rained out. Thank you, TL, for doing that as well. His golf weekend was rained out, and so he was harumphy because he couldn't finish his mandatory golf weekend in May. One of, I guess, well, practically every weekend. And he starts drafting this letter. One would think, if we're thinking that Ivanka and Jared are somehow mitigating forces, they were off doing whatever. And by the way, what is this? Friday morning, which would mean that Kushner and Ivanka would be, I guess, let's see, Trump arrived by helicopter Thursday. Okay, so they probably worked on it with him there, but Friday evening when it, because Jared and Ivanka are observant and orthodox, so they would not be, if somebody's typing up, they would not be working after sundown on Friday. So that's probably when Miller moved in, right? And they started working on this thing, and it got more angry and meandering. And they put together this letter that never went to Comey, but now Mueller has all of it. Basically, this writing and reading of a note in class got busted by Mueller, and now Trump is effectively having to stand up and read this in front of everybody. This is a huge deal, and kind of only matched by the coming financial woes of Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner. The fact that he has a copy of this letter that is pissed. The meandering stuff's not surprising. That just means it waffles back and forth between a bunch of points that they thought. But the fact that it's referred to as angry, and later on Trump referred to Comey as a nut job when speaking to the Russians in this giggle party he had in the Oval Office, where he shared Israeli intelligence with them, so much though that they lost a source over it in terms of Syria. This is, in many ways, a smoking gun, if anybody wanted one. And by the way, most crimes are solved without a smoking gun, right? A lot of times the gun's wet. They find it in a river. But they can sure as hell check the rifling on it against the bullet. The smoking gun is lazy police work. You don't need an investigation most of the time when you have a smoking gun. It ends it. But it's not how most people are caught, and it's certainly not how most white-collar crimes are solved. What they're found is, what the version of the smoking gun is, emails and letters like this one. We got to take a break. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We'll be back right after this. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Mm-hmm. So there we go. Oh, and thank you. Was it? Yeah. Thank you, Natalie. I didn't see that one when I did it. Thank you, Billy and Amos and TL. I wanted to make sure I mentioned you guys. Hi, Free Thinker. What's happening? Rocky Mountain Mike, always a pleasure. I guess it's from the light from the window. You look slightly. Yeah, it's. I don't understand. Like, this camera somehow needs a better white balance, and there's not much I can do about it. I don't know why. Switch that for whatever reason the FaceTime camera is handling the light a little better. It might just be the amount of light this thing is getting. To move it around. Know how to solve that. It's just way more sensitive than the other one, I guess. Either way, it's blown out on this side because But we're fine. We're in a hotel. I mean, what are you going to do? It's not like it's perfectly lit. So what if it makes me look exhausted and puffy? I am exhausted and puffy. There's a lot of problems I have when I have a stand-up night and I've got a show to do, because invariably I come home from doing my second show and it's midnight or 12:30 in the morning and I've got adrenaline for the next 2 hours. So I'm wide awake. And then I have to get up at, 7 to make sure that the tech is prepped for the show. I've learned my lesson. You'll notice there's less scrambling and plugging these days than there used to be, because I now get up an hour ahead of where I need, even for my prep, so that I can make sure the tech is, for the most part, as best I can get it based on the environment that I'm in. And there's just some parts of it that can't be helped. Just the nature. There you go. So what you gonna do? It's Africa down here in SoCal. I know. It's 95 in San Francisco, which is nuts. It's warm up here, and that's because all the water in the air is all down around where Harvey is. And the weather's going to change in places like this. You're going to watch, like, they're having the flowering desert, and I think it's in like Chile. It's like the hottest desert in the world is now damp because all the weather shifting patterns. I thought it hit 100. Yeah. Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. Gorgeous near Chicago, but in 90 by Labor Day. Yeah. Thank you, Amos. Yeah, this stand, doing the show after a night of stand-up is kind of like, after an intellectual bender, This must be what like rock stars feel like when they do, radio to promote a gig the day after they've, done a show the night before. Yeah. Here's where the talking ends. So we were just talking about in the chat room how, my goodness, it's hot in a lot of these places. It's, you've got the, 100 degrees in Los Angeles. You've got 85 in Atlanta. The storm front of Harvey and the recovery. By the way, I appreciate, let's say for the record, that I appreciate not only, I've always appreciated what FEMA does in these circumstances. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is a valuable part of the American fabric of existence. Without it, communities would have continued to be decimated like they were in the 20s and 30s when they were downriver from a broken dam or a flood pattern that was, shifting and new that they weren't aware of, or, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, all the stuff that they handle. We are a country who cares about its citizens. Therefore, we have an emergency management agency. We look ahead and we go, we know we're going to have these kind of things. Now, a lot of these folks can't be bothered on the Republican side to recognize that not only are these things, weather systems are going to be consistent in certain areas of the world, but that they are going to be increasingly bad because of climate change. And I made this argument yesterday when I was filling in for Norman Goldman on the first hour. We had tech issues, so we couldn't do the last two. But in the first hour, making the point that I don't care if you believe in climate change. Too much has been made, I think, on the left to make people on the right believe in climate change. If they view their religious beliefs as too strong, or that they think, like the Jim DeMents of the world, that God is in charge of the sky and that he will constantly clean it like a pair of sunglasses on the hem of his shirt no matter what we do to it, or if you believe that industry is so important that fluorocarbons and all those kind of things aren't to be worried about, then because there's no way that little output from a factory can affect climate. There's no talking you out of that. It is a matter of faith with a person like that. But what you can talk to them about, and what they can't argue away, is how pollution affects people. and how heavy metals and lead and others, mercury in your drinking water are poisonous and toxic, and it costs a lot of money to filter that stuff out. And if the industries themselves don't have to pay for it, the taxpayer does. Otherwise, they got to drink poison water. And that toxic air sends 100,000 children to the emergency room every year. And if you want to argue that you're pro-life, you can't argue that if you don't care about emissions in the air, toxic fumes. And if you broom one out, you can broom out the others. So there you go. So I don't care that somebody doesn't believe in climate change to some degree. If we can start at pollution and work our way up from there, right? So anyways, in terms of that, there's an old phrase about San Francisco. The coldest winter I ever spent was a summer I spent in San Francisco, and that's true. A lot of times you go to San Francisco in the summer, it's freezing. It's super weird. The way the bay is set up and the way the weather patterns are in there, it gets really cold during the day, even when the sun is out in San Francisco. It's odd. And it's one of the reasons why it's such a fashion-forward city in a lot of ways. Yes, it was Mark Twain. That's right, Carl, who said that. And from that, bring a jacket. I'm just saying, if you're ever going to go visit, you just see tourists freezing going, I thought this was California, right? So when you're looking at 95 degrees in some place like San Francisco, it becomes increasingly peculiar that a building would have their fireplace going. So, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. So, for those of you that haven't been following this particular side news, the San Francisco is where one of the biggest Russian consulates in the country is. It is no surprise that it is near our tech hubs. It is close to Silicon Valley, and they have a rather sizable consulate. Or had, rather, in San Francisco. As of Thursday, that ended. Rex Tillerson, who is probably going to get his BFF award from Vladimir Putin rescinded over this, the State Department ordered the closing of the Russian consulate in San Francisco and 2 annexes, one in Washington, D.C. and another in New York, that they had in existence on compound to the ones that the Obama administration shut down, that the Russians have been fighting to get back, and Trump has been trying to give to them. Essentially, spy headquarters in the United States, places they used to hack our election, to actively operate as a bounce point for both quote-unquote fake news and propaganda in their multi-tiered war that they're engaging in, and then messing with our election systems. Some of the pushback I've heard against the even on lefty channels about that it can't be the Russians trying to hack our election because the IP addresses came with scrambled within the United States. Yeah, and they went away. Those IP addresses disappeared after we closed those 2 Russian consulates. Once we shut down those Russian sites, those bounce points vanished. And now we have closed down 3 more Russian places. Tillerson has not expelled any further staff. I guess they can stay here and work from their apartment. But the consulate itself had black smoke coming from it yesterday. They have to be out by today, by the way. So yesterday, black smoke starts appearing from the roof of the Russian consulate in San Francisco that was so voluminous that people called the fire department. And the Russians turned the fire department away. And they said, oh, no, that's just the fireplace. And they went, well, yeah, you shouldn't have black smoke if you're burning just regular wood or what have you in the fireplace. That should be white smoke. That's fairly standard. Yeah, according to Carl, there's no new pope yet, although it is entirely possible that the St. Petersburg Orthodox will pick their own new pope, right? They're going to start their own auxiliary popishness, yeah? That'll give special dispensation to anybody who wants to spray green stuff in the face of a political opponent or a radioactive material on a journalist. You know what I mean? Faboom, left, right, spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch, and off you go. Go do it again. But new Russian Pope. But at in the afternoon, or early morning rather, on Friday, smoke starts coming out. They call the fire department. The fire department is not allowed in by the Russians, and they say they're burning stuff. And the fire department says, "Yeah, what are you burning? Because it's black smoke." And apparently they refused to say what they were burning. So the story is that it was undisclosed items, which means plastic. It means hard drives. It means stuff that they're afraid to fly with or leave the building with. Because, believe me, some of those rooms are tinfoiled and leaded up to keep stuff from being able to be peered through. Like currently, if you go by any of the tech, you don't even have to go by, like all the stuff that WikiLeaks has released about how the CIA can use your TV to spy on you or what have you, should give you a resounding duh in terms of the capability of what the CIA can do. The reality is your ability to do something and you're doing something are completely different things and are a matter of trust. Yeah, Edward in our chat room says copper and nickel plated rooms. That's true. But I was thinking more they just wear tinfoil hats. WikiLeaks released a trove of documents about the CIA and some code, by the way, that found its way into hackers' hands directly from them that was responsible for all those hospitals that started getting shut down. So super. Just a couple months later. But the idea that the CIA has the ability or explores the ability to do these things or figures out how to do it as a reverse engineered technology should come as no surprise. It's like when they say we have a plan for bombing Guam ourselves, or whatever, because there's somebody in the military whose job it is, because this is such a giant organization, to come up with a contingency plan for everything. I guarantee in 1968, somebody in the military's job, okay, Tompkins, your job today is figure out all the way that the hippies could get a hold of a nuclear weapon and not use it to destroy a city. That's all I want to see that. We want another one where you figure out how the Zodiac Killer could make his way on stage and convince everyone at Altamont to attack our soldiers with flowers off the coast of our base in the Pacific. Like, there's somebody for everybody in terms of in terms of the military. So understand that that's an important aspect of how the military operates. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want you to understand, like, this material that the CIA has the ability currently, and has had it probably since the early 90s, to read the contents of a hard drive through a wall using the electrical plug, the electrical wiring, not the computer wiring, not hooking up into an Ethernet cable or USB cable or piping in that way, but literally by plugging a device into an outlet connected remotely, in the building to a hard drive to read the contents of that hard drive. And it's not a technology they invented. It is a technology that they busted a hacker using and then usurped, essentially, saying we're going to keep hold of this because if we have it and you have it and this hacker has it, that means the Macedonian hackers have it. That means the Russians have it. It's no secret. And if we don't snatch this guy up and make him work for us, they're going to snatch him up, learn how he does it, and kill him. That's really the only difference between how we handle hackers in this country and how the Russians handle hackers a lot of times. Some of them, of course, they keep in a hotel room or an apartment and don't let them leave the country. But anyways, we got to take a break. When we come back, that wasn't the only fire spotted at a Russian site in the last 24 hours. We'll tell you about that when we come back, and we're going to start taking your calls. 773-763-9278. I'm Hal Sparks, live from Seattle, Grunge City, drinking some nitro cold brew from the local coffee constabularies and trying to talk a little bit slower so we can you can understand me and yet fit all this in. We'll be back. I'll see if I can get the chat up for you guys so you can see it on the screen. Yeah, it doesn't really do it on this one. So if you're watching on your device, I don't know that and it'll be kind of beside. I'm sorry, guys who are watching it on that. I can do that at home. I can't do it currently with my Rode rig. That's an order of magnitude larger that eats up computer space and might slow down the feed. Isn't that a function of YouTube? I don't know. Yeah. Protect those wonder pipes. I know. Well, I'm seriously giving consideration to ending the idea of doing 2 shows a night from now on. I mean, I don't want to be too like Beetlejuice about it. That's why I won't do 2 shows a night anymore, babe. I won't do it. But there is something. Also, you can't hear the WCPT feed. That's curious. 'Cause you should. I see it going through. Can you hear? Let me see if you can hear this though. You guys hear that music? I'm not. Sandworms. I'm right. Hate them. Been completely muted. Okay, good to know. Thank you. Might just be super quiet coming my way because the commercials were really loud when I was getting them. I do take voice lessons to improve my voice, but mainly my singing voice. The old focus donuts. It should go into there. We'll see. Oh yeah, because that's right. It's only going in that one source. So aggravating. It works so well at home now. I don't understand that. Can you do that with the Donald Hill? Yeah. I hear nothing like Schultz. I hear nothing. Oh, wow. Excellent. Okay. Cool. Let's see. How can I fix this? I'll fix this somehow. Lady, can you check the mic again from your way? I'm just trying to make sure everybody can hear in the chat room. I guess not. Maybe not. Please still be there. All right. Welcome back. There is also another fire in Washington, D.C. There was even footage of it. Some people were posting it on Twitter yesterday of a bonfire in the little back smoking courtyard at the Russian annex in Washington, D.C. as they get rid of problematic stuff that they're worried about travel. Okay, so why would you be worried about traveling with this stuff? Okay, because of current technology that's available. Let me explain something to everybody before they do the Big Brother panic about a lot of these things. Does the CIA and the NSA and the DNI and all those guys post 9/11 have a lot of tech that can look up your skirt in a technological way and get all your info through your microwave, like Kellyanne Conway thinks? Technically, yes. Practically, no. What they have is every piece of tech they've arrested someone for. Every single time we busted a hacker or a group of hackers, we like Operation Paperclip a couple of these people into the government and go, you're going to jail, you're going to work for us. Get used to the idea you are now an indentured servant, essentially, to the American intelligence structure that you were trying to break into. Or you're going to jail and staying there forever. Get used to that idea, right? And most of them, because they don't really have a moral dog in the fight or think that after a little bit of convincing that that would be a better position to be in, or they're just scared, they join in. A lot of them go in there. Okay, so the CIA, the NSA, the DNI, all these organizations, and the FBI all get this tech, which is why it's important that we have the FISA courts and we have to get warrants for this stuff. Because the idea that they're not going to have it, this kind of calamitous, pearl clutching that goes on. Do you realize what the CIA has, the technology they have to look into your life? Yes, they have it. Because Google has it. Because Samsung has it. Because LG has it. Because groups of these, hackers develop this stuff. Anything they have that's outside in both the corporate world and privately being used by hackers, if it is discovered by the CIA, you can be damn sure that they have it as well. The question is, and this is a matter of trust and belief and why it matters who runs your government, but when you've got somebody in charge like Obama who's literally saying, tightening up the rules on using the FISA courts over where the Bush administration was doing it, and making sure that we have rules of engagement in the military and the use of drones to minimize civilian casualties, that Trump has turned off. Literally, day one, said the ROE on drone strikes, don't even bother. Go after their families, their children, let them know we're there, right? So it matters who's in charge of the government. Because you're never going to take tools away once they exist. And these tools, by the way, are not just had by the CIA. The idea that the CIA just has them is absurd. WikiLeaks has them. Hackers involved with them have them. The Russians have them. The Chinese have them. North Koreans have them. Just understand that. Okay? So there's a reason why these people don't want to leave with these hard drives. There's a reason why they don't want to go through, if they have to fly out of the country or go to a less secure environment, why they can't just take their laptop home with them. Ask Anthony Weiner why that is not a successful plan, right? So in terms of the ability to do something versus, every police officer has the ability to shoot someone every day they're on the job. They have a weapon of death on their hip. The question is, how well are they trained and how much do you trust them? That becomes the important part of a civilized society. The tools aren't going away. There's no way we're removing, guns from a cop's hip, and that means they can end a life in an instant. The same thing is true of technological tools that the CIA, the FBI, the DNI, and all these organizations have. And the same thing is true of all the plans that they make. The making of the plans or the availability of the tools is not the shocking part. It's how they're used and if they are used properly. If you trust who's running that. It's why it matters who you vote for. It's why it matters who you put in charge. It's why you should engage in your midterms, because it's the congressional intelligence and the Senate and congressional House intelligence committees that advise on and give consent to how these tools are used. And if you let the Republicans run things and you just kind of go, well, it doesn't matter, everybody's the same, and then you're surprised when those rules of engagement change, then that's not the CIA's problem anymore. That's the voters' problem. It's your lack of engagement, your lack of oversight that you're allowing to give away. You're squandering. So the fact that there are fires happening at all of these sites in the last day before they leave the country or before they move to, commercial space, which is not secure. Ask David Petraeus. Before they moved there, they had to burn items. I want to. I've only got a couple minutes left in the hour, and I know we've got a bunch of callers. I just want the callers to know I'm gonna get you guys on the other side of the news, so we have a little more time with you. But I think it's important to know the difference between the tools available and the use of those tools do matter, and the availability of certain tools to people who are not trained up on both the legal ramifications of those tools and the moral reasons when to use those tools are incredibly important. It's why the Obama rules about the demilitarization of the police, in terms of allowing them to buy unused ordnance and effectively tanks from the military. Why it matters that now that Trump is in office, he's rescinding that, and that police now can buy military equipment. It matters who's in charge, even a little bit. Even the illusion that they care changes the downstream use of that stuff. You can't always protect, every window in a democracy, in an organization of any size, that everybody will operate above board, that everybody is there. But who's in charge absolutely creates a standard of being in an organization. And the Trump White House and the Trump military are distinctly different because they just don't care. They view this as a monarchy, and it matters. And that's why he'll write a angry, meandering letter and think it should be sent, because he thinks it's a scroll. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Your calls after the break, 773-763-9278. Mm-hmm. There you go. Yeah. Is there any coincidence there's a schism between Trump and U.S. intelligence? Absolutely. I mean, it would not be surprising to find, if we found out that they were hamstringing that FISA court, making it, tightening the rules on how they could engage stuff, or attempted to do so, to keep people off the, off the back of the CIA. And King David Lane, by the record, I am not disparaging kings. I'm disparaging pseudo-kings. Because I don't have anything particularly against the Swedish royal family, for example, or any of the current African monarchies, or any of the, to some degree, the Dalai Lama, who's a philosophical king of his people, and I like it. It's because of the word. You mean the word intelligence, right? Yeah. I'm not good with the intelligence community. Anything involving intelligence, I don't like it. Yeah, Trump has the best genes. It's passed down through the ages. The best. I have good genes. I'm smart. I'm like a smart person. Okay. No, he's not. He is the living example of the Peter principle, that why middle management idiots end up running the stuff, because their dad owns the company, where no matter what they do, they actually fail upward. Oh yeah, Robert Jackson. The idea that they're so conspiratorial They think the deep state is running everything. That they believe that Trump's going to be snuffed by his donors, all this other stuff. But that the Soros and the Rothschilds run everything. They don't want an American a citizen ID card. They're against having a citizen ID card, even though they want everybody to have a photo ID. They're against having a federally issued government ID. Because they think it's the mark of the beast or some nonsense. But they don't have a problem voting electronically with hackable machines. Saga of American capitalism falling apart. Although I don't think that's true. That's true a lot of times. I think American capitalism in a lot of ways has been hijacked by both the image and the impact of people like that. But the American capital system does have, it is paid by the Steve Jobs and the Edisons of the world. There is an effective ingenuity based system that has actually been from these people grinding and creating an industry that didn't exist before and being able to do that. The App Store alone has created more millionaires in the last 10 years than almost anything else. And so the advent of both that and it will. I agree. Genius is not common. Believe me, I tour. I know this, and I am one. Just on the technical merits, you can have your opinion about whether it's well spent genius or not. But it's not you, TL. It's my voice is very soothing, especially when it's worn out and dry from yelling for 3 days straight. 5 days straight. I've literally been talking or singing for a week and a half. Without break. So, but there is there is a genuine upside to well-regulated capitalism. It does allow people to break through. Capitalism, when it's done right, is the answer to the caste system that exists in a lot of societies. Even in democracies, it is the one thing that you kind of. Thank you. American capitalism has become unbalanced. Absolutely, there is no balance in capitalism. The illusion of balance is its problem, but it does, unfortunately, watch how they manipulate capitalism in many ways. Yes, key phrase is well regulated. That's right, Tom. Anyways, we'll get to this. This is a worthwhile conversation to have, but I want to get to the callers, and that's a long one. So, welcome back to the show. Let's take some callers, because the callers have been holding on for a little bit. I want to get to them. Who do we have, Lady B? Oh, excellent. Hi, Steve. Welcome to the Burn After Reading episode. Mm-hmm. Because they are. Right.
enemies or competitors to us,
Right.
and the conspiracy industry, because we've got people out there who are middle level management in the military who decided to do some study on possible alien contact.
Right.
And that has been grabbed up by the conspiracy industry as proof that aliens are visiting us and abducting people. Why? Because some idiot with a bachelor's degree and a rank of major authorized a study in 1957. That, which again means nothing other than he was stupid enough to believe this nonsense is worth the study.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the exercise of it, even to do it in terms of, look, we know the Russians are going to do a similar study. What are they going to find? We have to find out what they're going to find. This is we can assume, and they might read this totally different. We'll both come to the same conclusion, that there are radio waves that are patterned from another planet that we can assume is actual proof of life, or we will find something that isn't, right? And how will the Russians react to this? Will they react in a way that they feel like they want to move in a more peaceful direction and start communicating with other planets, or will they decide that the aliens are only going to favor one people and act in a war way, on a war footing? These are completely reasonable thoughts to have, especially during the height of the Cold War, right? Just to, as an exercise,
Every time, if you want to create jobs in the intelligence community, both here and in the Soviet Union and in China during the Cold War,
yep,
authorize a study in something, and that will automatically trigger the creation of a mirror body in Russia, in China,
right,
and other places, because they can't be left out of the circle.
It's actually, you're right, that's part of how Reagan ran up the bill that the Russians had to pay. We did think of it as the intelligence version of when the Allies had inflatable tanks on the Northern Front. To hide the fact that they were coming in Normandy, they put these big, and I don't, most people know this, I think, but some don't, I suppose, that before D-Day, the Allies created fake tanks and airplanes and phony runways and had soldiers, some of them running around looking, that were actually real soldiers, and then they had mannequins in windows and stuff that were rigged up to basically make fake airfields, so that when the Germans flew over, they thought, oh my God, they're coming from the north. So that they, to buy that. This is the intelligence equivalent of that same behavior. And we're not the only one who does it. China will do these. These are countermeasures. These are to make you waste your time looking for something. It is, if anybody watches Criminal Minds, they call it a forensic countermeasure. When you do something intentionally to make it look like you ran one direction, it's what Danny in The Shining did when he ran down the snow and then walked in his own footsteps backwards and hid. So none of this should come as a surprise. The point is, the pearl clutching about it in the abstract is another way of furthering the idea that it doesn't matter who's running the United States, that everybody's the same, that they're all villains around this, and that level of paranoid creates a strategic level of and a predictable level of paranoia and paralysis. And the goal of Russian propaganda for the last 6 years specifically has been paranoia and paralysis. What they push with their quote-unquote fake news and with their messing with our election systems by trying to hack into these systems. Before Obama considered them critical infrastructure, which means if they mess with them the same way and it's traceable back to them, it's technically an act of war, just like messing with our water. And why the Republicans are, by the way, against it, because they like the idea of somebody messing with our voting machines. If you mess with our voting machines now as a foreign country, it's considered critical infrastructure, and that's an act of war. So that's an effort to keep the Russians from trying to hack into the voter database systems and changing people's addresses so that when they show up to vote, they have to get a provisional ballot. Remember all the way back to 2000. when we first started seeing that, there was no reason to believe that that isn't a direct effect of it. So the idea is that the election's rigged. You can't trust the outcome, even if you do. Both sides are the same. All that is specific propaganda that you will want to gin up if you are Russia. That's the goal. They don't care about Trump as a human being. They don't want to make America great again because it'll be a great strategic partner in business. They don't believe there should be any other business. They are a country of attrition run by a mafia. The mafia doesn't want another mafia. The mafia only wants an easily bought police force to exist there, pretending to make stuff illegal, making show arrests of stuff so that you can raise the price of the drugs you're selling or the illicit activity. Once you realize the illicit activity isn't really being policed, the price goes down. So they need somebody looking like they're doing their job. But Russia's specific plan with all of its propaganda efforts, and it's messing with our election systems heretofore, and we'll see if they do it going forward, is paranoia and paralysis. Anytime you hear both siderism, or you hear that it doesn't matter, or like talk about black helicopters and the Pentaveret or the Illuminati running things or whatever, that storyline is a volleyball kept in the air by Russian intelligence and has been pushed further and further through social media, specifically ginned up by them over the last 6 years because of the success they had arguably in 2000. Let's take another caller. I got a couple of minutes before I have to take a break. So who do we have, Lady B?
We have Ike from Charleston.
Oh, right on. Ike! Are you there?
How you doing, buddy?
Hey, brother. Good to hear from you.
Yeah. Good to talk to you, bud.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Peter Ogburn, the producer.
Not off the top of my head, no, but go ahead.
Press.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, he went through a major operation. They cracked his chest open.
Oh, mercy.
So, you might want to send a shout out over to Peter at Press's operation. He's
right.
in the hospital there in D.C.
Okay, well, it's certainly out to his family and to his family and his loved ones, and of course everybody at the staff over there, because that's a rough one. A friend of mine our dear friend Chris Bono, who used to open for me on the road, had open heart surgery not too long ago. He's recuperating, and kind of we were keeping it on the down low when it happened. So they've made great strides. So hopefully it wasn't too emergency invasive, but it's a tough one to come back from. That's a lot of work. So fingers crossed, and thanks for bringing it up.
It hit him out of the blue, like it does with most. It does with most people. Meanwhile, I've had my final leg surgery, and I'm trying to heal back up. I've got a bone graft, and they reset all the steel after I fell off that roof last year.
Yeah, I remember.
So I'm on the road to trying to pull back up and out of it. But I'll hit you with these three things real quick. You ready?
Go for it. Yep.
All right. Yeah. The Russians are going to burn everything they can. Our intelligence officers would do the same thing. So that's nothing surprising.
Yep.
When it comes down to the flood response and the fire response, I don't understand why we don't have an arm of our military that is, for example, a brigade or a unit or whatever that has multiple amphibious water vehicles, hovercrafts, and they're trained in flood rescue to the point of, say, 20,000 troops on a base somewhere. And the same way with the fire problems that we have, why we don't have the same thing with, say, 100 or 200 tankers.
You're a genius, Ike. I completely agree.
To where we can do this kind of thing.
Right.
And lastly, you know how they sent in the Cajun Navy to Texas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I got an idea, and I figured this would be one you could work on.
Okay.
We need to form up a gay Navy and send them in, and let's see if these bigots will get in the boat with them.
Right. Well, I got news for you. We already have a gay Navy. They're just not aware of it, or they don't, they don't care as long as they don't hear about it. But believe me, the military, like the priesthood in some ways, has been a refuge for a lot of people who grew up in very bigoted areas of the world, of the country.
Yep.
They go into the military because it gives them protection and cover from all the slights and and slant of their neighborhood when how they derisively talk about gay people. It gives them honor in the community. It protects them so that if someday they do come out of the closet or they end up moving away or whatever, they have a little bit of valor to keep that bigotry at bay, that prejudice at bay, and it happens a lot. And the Navy, quite a few. As a matter of fact, there was literally a guy in front of me in line flying to Seattle from Los Angeles when I came up here to do this weekend. Full Navy regalia, cap, his whole sailor suit, his naval uniform, and gay and a fan of Queer as Folk. Just had to mention it.
I was thinking about the photo op. Like 10 or 15 boats show up, and you got
just drag queens. Not even military. Just like a boat full of Stonewall refugees. Right.
Boats are done up in with
like a parade,
and this and that and everything, and they launch them into the water and just watch the look on these bigots' faces while these fellas go out and rescue people.
Right. Go all the way. Just big glitter boat. Everybody in gold shorts. Just straight out of a pride parade and go, last boat for 2 hours. There is, that's not a bad idea. And by the way, I completely agree. We have this, remember all the paranoia about that military action that we had where they were, Jade Helm, right? And everybody's freaking out about that. We should, as part of our, general readiness, use regularly occurring natural disasters and the after efforts as scramble exercises for the military in the country on a regular basis, because there's a lot to be said of going in and sweeping houses and getting people out. If we have to do rescue or hostage or any of those kind of things in a country that we are allied with that suddenly goes south, that's actually a great training exercise for places that have been hit by tornadoes or natural disasters. So you're absolutely right. It's a brilliant idea, and it should.
You could organize it under the civil defense statutes.
Yes.
And they wouldn't necessarily be regular military, or you could do them as a National Guard so you don't violate the common whatever that thing is.
Military can operate on ground. They just can't police the populace. So if they're not going in there to deal with looting or any kind of thing like that, they can't take any action on those kind of things where they're not acting as a police force. They can go in and rescue anything they want. They can roll in there with amphibious vehicles and pull walls off of buildings where people are trapped and that kind of stuff. Absolutely. I went way past the break because I love talking to you. I'm glad you're healing up. We think about you often. It's so great to hear from you, Ike. Everybody in the chat room says hi and is very excited when they hear you're on the line. So really appreciate it, and take care of yourself, man. We're going to take a break. We'll be back after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. What my personal feeling about Antifa is that first of all, I don't believe in any kind of violent action. I do think they should always limit themselves to being barriers and never strike back. That should be a standardized thing. Let yourself be struck. It's what the Peace Marchers did. It is an incredible effect once you start fighting. It's a different thing altogether. Anytime you burn or break stuff, it's used as weapons by the side that you're up against. So Antifa doesn't mean anti-Nazi; it means anti-fascist, and specifically, it has become a catch-all for anti-Nazi, anti-racist, what have you. But you can't be violent at all. you have to, unfortunately, if what, and it's the same thing that goes with cops, essentially. What gives you honor in that circumstance is that you are willing to receive violence without doling an equal amount out. And it's important, yeah. And by the way, some of the violence will come from, spoilers within it, because it's not like it was an organized army or anything. So, it's completely easy for the other side to show up in Antifa clothing or what have you, wear just all black and a hoodie and something, and throw, a Molotov cocktail, and then all hell breaks loose, right? So that's the problem with wearing masks and operating in sort of anonymity. Now, it sometimes is necessary, so it's a very tough thing to understand. But I think one of Antifa's problems is shortening the name. They should fully go by Anti-Fascist. And don't call themselves Antifa, call themselves Anti-Fascist. Yes? Yes, go ahead.
The update on Peter Alberg, he's doing much better.
Oh, good.
The station has been keeping on contact with Bill Press. And
gotcha.
His,
okay.
Peter Alberg's family.
That's
so he's doing better.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Okay.
15 seconds.
Okay, cool. I'll bring that up when I come back.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And I'm no Bill Press fan, by the way. Good.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back to the show. Just Peter from Bill's Press show we were talking about in the last break. He word on the street is directly from Lady B, and he's been in contact with the Bill Press show, is that he's doing much better, and his family's I guess in contact with him or is aware of his condition, and he's doing okay. So that's good news. And I appreciate Ike bringing that up, by the way. Let's grab another caller right away. Who do we have, Lady B? Because I don't want to get too far into this break. I rode the last one pretty, yeah.
We have David from Hoffman Estates.
Excellent. Hey, David, welcome.
Hey, Al.
Hey, go ahead. Yeah.
Hey, on that, talking about that military, it's kind of a slippery slope. Or wasn't it just an hour ago you're talking about the police getting all these military weapons?
Right.
For Trump. I mean, you put
a
wedge in the door there.
Well, no, I here's the thing. I believe that they should not get any offensive or defensive weaponry. Like having a giant truck that you can, that's like a transport or something, is not what's concerning. Like if they're getting just, pickup trucks and other stuff that the military uses and sells, because the military it doesn't just have tanks and all that kind of stuff. It also has, weapons barriers, for example. So let's say police have to have a standoff or a hostage situation. The military has these breakout walls, essentially, that they can protect people from fire while they're negotiating or whatever, that they could give. I don't have a problem with that particular part of it, but I do think the activity of the military has the.
I seen where they had gotten M203 grenade launchers and stuff.
Right.
Like that.
That's exactly. That's absurd.
That's what I'm saying when you're talking about the military coming in there. That'd be no different than Hitler with his brown shirts and black shirts. His own personal
but I do think
with the army.
Right. Well, I think the Army does have, and both the Navy, the Army, they all have rescue-oriented materials. They have, non-gun mounted helicopters. They have fire suppression airplanes. The stuff that they use that's actually non-tactical, and they need to exercise using those as much as anything else. So they should practice saving people, and it might help shift the mentality as well, that you're caring about your citizens.
I mean, like you said, you got a National Guard, you got a Coast Guard,
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I was going to get at for you was I had just read this morning about where that accused leaker Reality Winner has gotten a delay by a federal judge for her trial until March allowing her lawyers and expert witnesses to get time to get the required security clearances that they are going to need, to access, this classified information, and that the government will probably be using on her in court. And then also that where the FBI agents who had questioned her did not read her Miranda rights. And her lawyers say that the alleged confession is going to be barred from the jury trial.
Right. Well, as it should be. If that's the case, that's how it should work out. Absolutely. And I would argue that that's our legal system functioning properly. That if the FBI guys don't do that and they lose that confession, those guys lose position and get the dressing down that they deserve in that situation. And the same thing with her lawyers. That's exactly how it should play out. She should, if you're releasing government documents that are classified, you're going to be prosecuted. But in that prosecution, you should have a full defense. And if that takes time because your lawyers have to go through a security process so that they can see what you're doing, and they don't pass that, then you have to find other lawyers to do that, and the state has to provide you with said lawyers or what have you, or you have to find different lawyers that are specialists in this kind of thing who do have security clearances or can do that. Then that's exactly how a country with a functioning intelligence system that also has problematic behaviors within it that will lead to whistleblowers should play out. So that people who legitimately want to do the country ill can't just hide under the Whistleblower Act, but genuine whistleblowers do have recourse. I would argue that what you...
I'll
go ahead.
With this, when you mentioned about Petraeus there, he had lied to the FBI that time. He used to lie them books and files up in his attic that time. He had like about 6 of them up there.
Oh, totally. Well, he was sharing information via Gmail with his... He was sharing information via Gmail with his mistress, who was also his biographer. And during, literally, of all the stupid things that have been said before the Senate Intelligence Committee over the years, lies and truths, the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard is Petraeus saying he thought Gmail was secure. The fact that a guy who heads the it's goofy.
Hey, listen, let me get off so you can get some other help.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, we got to take a break right now, and we'll get the other callers on the other break right on time. Thanks. Appreciate it, David. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Thanks for listening to WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk, one of the only, progressive stations still around. So if you're a regular listener, I really appreciate you tuning in and supporting the station. Support the advertisers and all that stuff. It means a lot and it matters to the station. So we'll be back right after this. Let's see. Does anyone know who's the head of FEMA in Texas still? David Grant, Obama guy, or is it a Trump person? I've researched and gotten both answers. I don't. Anyway, I don't condone violence, but I've also seen Antifa protect clergy students, so I reject the moral equivalency argument. Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's moral equivalency at all between Antifa and the Nazis themselves. That's an absurdity at its root, because if you're literally showing up to stand against, especially people carrying the Nazi flag or the Confederate flag, which are two nation states and ideologies that declared war on the United States. The Nazis, we were in a war with them. The Confederacy declared war on the Union, on the United States as an idea, tried to break it apart. So the idea that you're carrying those flags, you may as well march carrying a Russian flag during the Cold War and going, if I could get a nuke in here, I would. It's absurd. So, yeah. Ed Schultz, got to remember that RT wants TV shows that stir the pot, that try to cause friction, division in the USA. Bottom line purpose of RT, absolutely. And and what they'll do is they'll only hire people that kind of come from this position that it's all a festering. They're no good people, but 2 or 3 martyrs that are pure, even if they're not. But are constantly undermined, like Bernie or something like that, like Redacted Tonight or any of those shows that kind of create the illusion that there is no good to be had in the United States, that democracy in and of itself is suspect and it is rife with corruption and destructive, violently, murderers. And the idea is that you just, undercut, the existence of the country as a whole. Yeah. Yeah, if you carry a Nazi, Confederate, or Gaston flag, you're a traitor to America, period. I completely agree. I mean, I think you are stating your political ideology and staking it on an organization, a political ideology or a group that declared war on the United States. And you're either comfortable with that or you're a fool. Or both, I suppose. When you have Joy Reid and Nancy Pelosi drinking the Kool-Aid about Antifa being bad, it's a problem. I don't think they're drinking the Kool-Aid that it's being bad. I think they're trying to decry the violence because they don't want to be linked to it. It's not Kool-Aid. They're attempting balance in an unbalanced situation, and don't overreact to their response to that. Because if Nancy Pelosi and of course, if a burning trash can or throwing stuff through a window is bad, of course I'm going to say that. Don't get caught up in the, oh my God, if they're not purists about it, they don't let Antifa get away with everything, or if they can criticize it at all, it's not helpful. Just go, that's politispeak, and it's necessary if you're trying to create a situation where there's no violence, right?
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the mega worldwide radio program with Hal Sparks.
We love Dick Kay, and if you want to know about Chicago politics and Illinois politics on a micro and macro level, he's the man. His show follows ours right after this, so stick around and listen. He's an institution in and of himself. And a terrific guy and a lot of fun, and he's one of the reasons why I'm sad I'm not in the studio more often, because to say hi to him when I'm coming and going. That and to see the lovely Lady B. Which reminds me, Lady B, who else do we have on the line? Let's take another caller.
We have a first-time caller, Silas.
Look at that! All right, hey Silas, welcome.
Hey, Al, how you doing?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Listen, I wanted to say I love your show. Okay.
But however,
what I called about now, what I called about was make it real fast.
Sure.
The Army did have a amphibious unit. And stationed in, guess where? New Orleans, or
right.
New Orleans area.
Mm-hmm.
And they had these amphibious boats,
right?
Truck boats,
Yep.
and where they could easily go around and they could ford water.
Yeah.
And guess where that unit was sent just before Hurricane Katrina?
Phoenix. I don't know. Out of the state. Iraq, right? Sure. Yeah. That was true. By the way, that was true of almost all of our National Guard. Most of the National Guard was gutted because a lot of people didn't want to serve in Iraq, especially after the second and third round, and they were having a hard time both finding people who would go, and they were spending so much, so many munitions and vehicles were getting destroyed. They were basically skimming from the National Guard in all the different states to make that happen.
Yes, sir.
And
correct.
Yeah. And again, this is, this goes to my feeling about like healthcare. I believe that if you look at the common defense, for example, the idea that, providing for the common defense is an integral part, and the Republicans especially have used this over the years to inflate the military budget to an absurd amount, because it's in the Constitution to provide for the common defense. Well, my argument is that you're more apt to be killed by a cancer caused by toxicity out of your control, or an infectious disease that you had no way of knowing you were going to come in contact with, then you are being killed by a terrorist by a factor of about 15,000 to 1. And therefore, it is more important to defend the lives and safety of the U.S. citizenry against infectious and toxic disease points than it is against actual weaponization of soldiers or fighters from another country or another ideology. That's just a fact. That's on the measure. So providing, single payer or providing a baseline health protection for the citizenry is a much better way of saving lives and protecting the American citizenry than having, a redundant nuclear program that could destroy the Earth 7 times over, or far more tanks, airplanes, and bombers than we could ever use to destroy any country that would go against us. Do I think we need an active and functioning and high-tech military? Absolutely I do, because there's no reason to pants yourself in front of a world that does have other countries like Russia or China that if they saw a weakness would come after it and go, we can just take that country. They have great resources. Look at Africa and how they're acting out there, or Afghanistan, or Syria. So it's necessary. But with a third of the money we spend on the military, we could save the lives of literally 150,000 people a year who die simply from bad medical interactions, who are ill-served or underserved by our healthcare system. And that's the common defense. What are you doing but trying to save the lives of your citizens so they can live free or die, right? So you want to keep that death part off as far as possible, keep the freedom flowing, right? So how do you do that? You keep me from dying from Ebola or Zika or Spanish flu or bird flu or a cancer caused by heavy metal toxicity from a coal mine upriver that hasn't been productive in decades and is being outpaced by solar. You move us from having lead gasoline to having unleaded gasoline because you can track it directly to the deaths of citizens, more deaths than you could ever hope to kill with a dirty nuke. That part, and it kind of is in line with your kind of view of like, how do we effectively use our military and all the stuff we're paying for? We have, can you properly use a spy plane that's circling a country that it has no way of harming us to find survivors by heat signature in a flood zone? Of course you could. But
One other thing is that the original purpose of the National Guard was to help people. That's
civil defense, right? That's right. It was literally civil defense, and we ran out of enemies. Literally, post World War II, the idea of we didn't have it. There weren't enough Japanese subs to spot off the coast of San Francisco. So the National Guard, the civil defense troops, got repurposed as the National Guard because we have more floods and illnesses than we have terror attacks or war on our shores. And even when they do, there are more people killed by getting the wrong drug when they go to the hospital by a factor of 15 than there were killed in one day on 9/11. What's the bigger threat to your citizenry? And the problem is, it's just not macho. It's just not sexy. That's the reality. Is that it's not macho to ask for flood relief the way it is to ask for, depleted uranium bullets, because that sounds badass. When really all it does is give testicular cancer and birth defects to the very people you tie a yellow ribbon around a tree and say you support, or undermine the VA. So I'm with you. Again, what do we do with our civil defense and all those kind of things? We send it off to war zones that are optional, to protect us from a threat that's not real, while our citizenry drowns. There's a certain point where, the establishment gets a bad rap, and the kind of boringness. I pine for a time when politics was boring. You know what I mean? When everybody wasn't trying to be their own little celebrity as a politician. That it's not surprising that we have a reality show president right now, because over the last couple of decades, and you can trace it to, I don't know. The Nixon-Kennedy debates, or Reagan being the first, actor who's really knew how to operate, on camera, or Bill Clinton playing saxophone on Arsenio Hall, the cult of personality aspect of the presidency, moving away from this kind of boring, rote leadership role that has really done a disservice to the country, because that kind of activity always ends up being kind of in line with sort of showpiece legislation, showpiece acts of Congress, when in reality the best use of your government and your military is effectively a sort of chugging along management, right? And I think that's the difference a lot of times between Democrats and Republicans, is that a lot of times Democrats, and for better or worse, we don't look for a leader. We look for a really strong manager who knows what they're doing. Somebody who can run stuff and not get confused along the way with some sort of ideological firestorm, and just understands that, we are a nation of equal protection. We are a nation of laws. We are a nation of equal opportunity, and we should move towards that the best we can, to the heart of the Constitution as best it can be acted out at all times. But we don't look for kind of a sycophantic leadership thing, whereas the Republicans absolutely do. Every time they're electing a father figure or like a cult figure, essentially since Reagan. That that this like idea that we need a strong leader in war, or the guy you can have a beer with idea, which is sort of the 90s offshoot republicanism, that nothing really matters anymore. So we'll just go on personality. The funny thing is, and Rita Marie in our chat just said Hal Sparks for president in 2020. That's a little early. I'm saving my political activity where I'm actually running for my 60s, just so you know. And I'm serious about that idea, is that I would like to spend my 60s decade in office, and then go back to stand up when I'm 75. But the point is, if I had my druthers, I'd kind of almost be, I think Al Franken took the right approach, was, yeah, you're funny in what you do, but you try to be a boring servant. And Carl says, sorry, Hal's not eligible to run. He was born in Kenya. Believe me, that I can tell you. So no good. Let me take a break, and we'll come back. And I think we got a couple more callers. And then we have a curious happy ending this time. I've got a couple of things that I want to add to the happy ending. This one's really interesting. This will get you down a rabbit hole of study, which throws a monkey wrench, no pun intended, into our entire idea of humanity in some ways. Hey, and Billy in our chat just said, Hal, you won't be able to stand up when you're 75. I will too. I'm damn healthy. I'll be able to stand up unless you know something I don't. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide. HalSparks.tv on YouTube. You can go and like and subscribe. We can use all the subscribers we can get. I don't spam you from there. It only just lets you know when we're on the air. And all the subscriptions help us gain a little ground in YouTube. We got a long way to go before we can catch up with the white supremacists who seem to have staked a claim on YouTube, and the alt-right. We'll get there someday, but I'd rather have good people I've earned than bots from Macedonia any day. I appreciate you guys. We'll be back after this. Make your rhythmics gig again. I think the mega hats are a great idea. I'm kind of excited about that idea. I got to find a company that I can get to do that won't be too expensive. But I'm damn straight going to make sure those hats are made in the United States, though. Would you guys, if I got blue bill caps that said mega on them, 80's the new 50. It kind of is. Al Franken would be a terrific president. He's smart. He's got good management skills. He's aware. You know. Yeah. We'll have to find an American merch company. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be like Dick Clark. I'll be like, I'll lower the, like, as president, I'll do the ball drop every year, right? There you go. There you go. Here's a company, Union Wear. Union made in the USA. That'd be a good company to do so. Yeah. Look at that. There you go. Look at this stuff. There you go. Sandwich visor, low style stretch fit. That's a good one. That's a good batch. That's nice. That's a quality. Virtual sample. There you go. I'll look into this. Well, the red ones are the ones that are like they've got listed or whatever. I gotta find kind of a brighter blue though. I'll work it out. But it's nice that there's a little like union made company that does it in the you know, that it's kind of nice, you know. You'd think the president could actually work that out, figure out how to do that on his own.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
Welcome back. Let's grab another caller. I think we got a couple more. And then, yeah. Who do you have there, Lady B?
Yes, we have David from Sacramento, and he said he just came out of surgery, too.
Oh, wow. Well, take it easy, Dave. Don't pop a stitch on us. I hope you're okay. Glad to have you with us.
Yeah, I just got out of my hernia surgery, and I want to thank the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and all the taxpayers that you guys paid saying that they were going to repeal my insurance, my Medi-Cal. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure give some people some common sense skills, since they don't have any, that when he says that he's going to go ahead and repeal my Medi-Cal for future observation to go back to the hospital for my surgeon to have a checkup, it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you why. Why is because the states are waiting on the sideline with their attorneys, and yet they will sue Trump and the Congress and take it to the United States Supreme Court, who are the ones that approved the Affordable Care Act. And do you think that you think the United States Supreme Court judges are going to put millions of people on the line and make them die and defund the Medi-Cal? Absolutely not. I want to make sure you understand that. So it's never going to happen. So I just want to let people to know my $20,000 surgery that you guys paid. Yes, Hal. Yes, let it be California, Missouri, Florida.
Right.
You guys paid for my insurance, and you paid for my surgery. And I want to thank the Affordable Care Act for being there, because otherwise I would have been stuck with the $20,000 bill.
Right. And the ancillary, I'm so glad, and I'm glad you're healthy, and and heal well. Take it easy for a couple weeks. No deadlifts for at least 6 weeks. I'm just telling you. They didn't tell you that. I have a couple of my good friends who are singers had hernia operations because they, of years of pushing down into their diaphragm actually caused hernias. Sebastian Bach and Doug Pinnick both had hernia operations because of like how they sing. I mean, because of the pressure involved. It's no joke. And before Doug didn't have insurance for a bit either, and he gets his through the exchanges as well. So like this is us taking care of our citizenry. Some guy walking around in 160-degree heat in a country that we're not technically at war with for any reason doesn't save you from septicemia caused by an internal wound or a hernia or any of the ancillary effects of not being able to treat or care for your injury. It doesn't benefit anyone that way. And I have honor and respect for the soldier who's in the position to go do that. And when they are necessary, they go in a second and deserve our respect. But a certain amount of respect is lost for the front lines of disease control and protection against illness and infirmity that is inevitable on some fronts, and in many ways not within your responsible capability. The common defense, as far as I'm concerned, extends to health care. The idea of health care as a right is a weird argument. I agree with it, but is a weird argument to have with people on conservatives. But if you argue from the common defense idea that I'm no more responsible for catching, Lyme disease or getting, having appendicitis than I am for an IED or somebody walking into my place of business and shooting the place up while I'm there. And yet they're very excited about attacking and dealing with that problem and have almost no interest in dealing with contagious disease that affects pregnant women as a point of order. That Zika is more of a threat, especially with the hurricane being what it is more of a threat than terrorism will be to multiple generations of Americans who could, because of the stagnant water in Houston and the outlying area, grow with a continuing threat of mosquitoes and push north up into the country because of that. Understand that. Understand that is the common defense. That is a common problem that requires defense. You need to be defended against contagious disease that you have no idea is coming. You need the NIH and the CDC always aware of the rise in contagious disease in other countries and working with other health organizations in foreign countries when they go, yeah, if you have a lot of travelers from our country, this is the disease we're seeing, and this is the only way we can come up with a vaccine or some sort of protection against it. No, I mean, by the way, Edward in the chat was saying, do you mean 160 and not 160? No, I mean 160-degree heat. So you were saying, Lady B, we have another caller?
Yes, we have one more caller, David from San Francisco.
Awesome. Great. David from San Francisco, just down the street from the big Russian bonfire. Hey, David, welcome.
Hey, how the hell? Yeah, it looks like California's tuning in. I was going to raise a couple of different things. By the way, heads up to the other David in Sacramento. He good luck with that medical care.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're talking about the exposure to people in Houston with the hazardous wastes down there.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be so simple to have a mobile shower and run it right down the street. Everybody come out of their houses and come away from their works, jobs, and shower up and get that hazmat off of them. Because the chemicals, my God, they're cancer cases. You leave it on your skin for 5 days or 9 days or something like that in the hot sun. You're going to, my God, the people would be dying.
Absolutely. Well, and that's, by the way, it doesn't even just, real quick, it's not even just the cancer aspects of it, is that you can get, toxicity that leads to kidney failure, which, and the failure of your liver as well, which is way faster and harder to interrupt even than cancer. Our treatment of cancer has actually gotten very good in this country. But if you are, affected by a virulent form of toxicity from your environment quickly, you can go south really quick. And unless that's mitigated. So, excellent point. Continue.
Well, you're familiar with the Kelo decision, the idea that your land could be stolen by some property developer that claims that he can make more money than you are. That was a crooked Supreme Court ruling of 10 years ago. And can you imagine what Trump is going to be doing with the Kelo decision in natural or in big disasters like this, where he could come in and seize 14 square miles and pass it off to his crony buddies.
Pass it off to his own organization. Pass it off to Jared. Right, Jared could buy it at pennies on the dollar and then use it as leverage to pay off 666 Fifth Avenue. That's exactly the problem with this crowd.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I'm glad you remembered the address there. The insurance, the Kelo decision, and then the other one was the VA hospitals. Apparently, the union that handles the staffing at the VA hospitals has been complaining because 49,000 people have not been hired, even though Congress authorized the expenditure last year.
Right.
So they're sitting with 49,000 people who could be down there helping out. I don't know how many VA hospitals are in Houston all the way over to Mississippi.
Right.
But
it is 100% mismanagement.
That could be helping out right now.
Absolutely, but it's I appreciate the call. We're right at the end of the show, so always awesome.
Yeah,
and I will say that this is why management matters. This is why your vote does matter. This is why who's in charge does matter, because there is no way that organization would be that understaffed if Hillary Clinton was in office. Period. End of story. The hurricane still would have happened, but the response would have been better staffed and better able to respond in that. Okay, we only got a couple seconds left. I want to leave you with this story. This is our happy ending, and this is kind of amazing. Human footprints have been found in Greece that are 5.7 million years old. Scientists say they may have found human footprints in Greece that date back to a time when it is commonly believed our ancestors were still only in Africa, potentially changing our ideas of how the species evolved and dispersed. That's right, 5.7 million years ago. Dollars, listen to me. They have found human footprints in fossil form. I'll post that on at Hal Sparks with the hashtag HSRPM if you want to take a look at it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for the show today. Thanks, everybody who gave in the super chat. We love you. We'll see you next time. Yes, so mote it be. Yeah, hold on, we'll switch over to post show for 1 second. Give me a second. There you go. What's happening? Yeah, that's right. It's the best. It's Hal Sparks. How are you? So this, the story, by the way, and now chat, we can speak freely amongst ourselves. Let's see. And Charlene, my feature act, who's touring with me or whatever, is asking me if I want Starbucks while I'm here. Not yet. Hold on. I'll have to speak this one because I type it too much. Not yet, period. I had a nitro cold brew, and that's enough for anyone. So, in terms of, let's see, I'm going to catch up with the chat because there you go. Yeah, so this story that I was referencing is pretty amazing. It kind of adds to the idea that there were multiple expressions of humanity across the globe that didn't just come, and it kind of, it's almost like the Australopithecus. Yeah, it's almost as if the it relates to like the Tower of Babel story. Oh, I'm gonna hang up, by the way. Thank you, Lady B. You're awesome. I'm hanging up now. For the blues music kicks in, and we're like, wah, 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 wah. I saw Starbucks here, there, everywhere, and some vegan restaurants. Yeah, well, my ex-girlfriend is Hungarian, and her family is still there, and I'd always wanted to travel there just so I could say hi to them, because I spent so much time talking to them, years ago, that I want to kind of, give them a hug in person, because, relationships come and go and they pass or whatever, but I'm one of those people, like, I still have, for the most part, jovial relationships with all of my exes in life. And my first girlfriend ever, from when I was 11 to when I was 14, Lois, she moved to St. Louis and came to my shows in St. Louis and brought her husband and her friends, and it was really cool. It was just, it's good stuff. Anyways, let's see. Happiness no one asked for before they their persons or papers or political before they arrest them in Houston. Yes, that's absolutely true. When two women had to invent a male co-founder of their company to get any traction, that says a lot about where we are as a country. That was the storyline of Remington Steele. Anybody remember that show, Remington Steele? That was literally the storyline. Oh, I could take my earbuds out because I don't need to hear Chicago anymore too. Understand that literally that was a comedy premise for the show Remington Steele, the show where Pierce Brosnan was first introduced to the public. It must be weird how it wasn't. It was kind of nice, actually. Did anyone notice a lack of any really annoying troll today? Yeah. Yes, bad show. Celebrating our 31st anniversary. I can't even remember having exes. Aw, that is too sweet. That's adorable. Yeah, I love Remington Steele. That was Stephanie Zimbalist in that show with Pierce Brosnan. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, which the foundation Penelope Gadsden to create a fake male co-founder to conduct business by email. Yeah, you can say that was necessary or unnecessary. It's hard to say. It has been my experience currently, especially where the trend is going, that and this may be why they came out about it and why they're saying that, is because female tech startups are getting much needed attention now because of the lack of attention they were getting before, and because people are recognizing that disparate, that chasm between businesses being functional and who was running them, whether they were male or female, being an actual factor in angel investing and all that kind of stuff. Now that that's getting news, companies run by women are actually getting a little more leeway, to the point where a couple of them are brooming the men that they had as their kind of silent partners or financiers, getting them off the stationery, as it were. So I remember watching Remington Steele in the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah, I loved that show. It was, Pierce Brosnan was incredibly charming and very funny on that. Stephanie Zimbalist was smart and great, and like it was a nice. I forget the guy, her real partner's name, the actor. I'm blitzing on it right now. Who was supposed to be like the American pretty boy, who was actually he was doing the real investigating. Their false face man they named Kevin Mann. So funny, yeah. Was it better than Jake and the Fat Man? That's the crux of the argument between hardcore Bernie folks versus hardcore Hillary folks. The reality is if you're allowing yourself to be bifurcated that far into, quote, hardcore Hillary, hardcore Bernie, there are so few hardcore Hillary people who wouldn't have voted for Bernie, whereas the other way around is not true. It's hard to not recognize a level of sexism that goes with that, but also a level of comfort with deluding themselves about certain issues where they'll let certain stuff slide with Bernie, but not with Hillary because they're viewing themselves as purists. It's curious, but I would. I think Maureen's, you're kind of right that they're all bots. There is an element where a lot of them that are being ginned up by bots are thinking that they're being their own echo chamber is digital. So if I can't move to a state and feel safe as a lesbian, it affects my economic chances. Absolutely. Hell, we're the same age, so these references are fresh. I tend to, whenever I hear somebody jump on with a super pro Bernie to the exclusion of other people, or super pro Hillary to the exclusion of people, or pro Trump to the almost sycophantic, that I just assumed from a start that they're a bot and work back from there. Because I anytime I have a conversation at length with someone, the only people I've ever seen who are so hardcore Bernie that they just do nothing but slam Dems all day all have shows. I don't meet them in person very often. So like Jimmy Dore and and everybody on Redacted Tonight, like that group tend to be almost they have bot driven followers to some degree. So they have that, they're shored up by this illusion of having a lot of subscribers or what have you, or viewers, or they're on RT, where it's supported financially by the very people who are trying to do that stuff. So I always take it with a grain of salt. I don't immediately write off everything that those people are saying. Certainly, any of the complaints that that they'll put forth on there. It's the solutions that I think are more important. What's the solution that you're coming up with? What's your answer to it? Because it is important to make sure that we have strong FISA courts, that we have make sure that our intelligence community is as forthcoming as it can be, all those kind of things, that our military is not bigger than it needs, that we mitigate civilian deaths. If we do have to go to war, that we go to war as a last resort. All those things are important and right. And same thing with banks and the like, that banks as a financial institution aren't going away anytime soon. The idea that they are is kind of a cartoon. I don't buy it. By the way, I'm on a different mic, so I don't have to need this to talk to you guys right now. That banks exist. Mortgages are going to exist. The idea that you're going to get rid of those is kind of ludicrous and silly. So then it matters who's running them and who's running the regulatory bodies that protect you from them. And so using phrases like banksters and that kind of stuff is an oversimplification and doesn't help. I love Tom Hartman. I think he's a genius. I appreciate him as a human being. I think the reference term banksters was carried away with and ended up being more destructive than positive. It allowed a veneer of hypocrisy for everybody who nods and says, "Oh, he's banksters, yes," and then goes and uses their ATM card as if there's some sort of separation between the fact that you have a checking account and a savings account and a mortgage and perhaps a business account, is an absurdity. And unfortunately, when you have a hypocritical action that takes place every single day, there is a paranoid or sort of self-righteous reflex that occurs where you become overly defensive about it. It is like the hyper-religious closeted gay man who acts out and is worse towards gay people than even your kind of run-of-the-mill, anti-gay redneck. Like, he's specifically harsh about it. Why is that? Well, because he's living a hypocritical life and he's paranoid that people will find out. So he has to act out in even a bigger sense, and it creates this psychological bifurcation that goes on that is tough to deal with day to day. You're living a lie and you know it. And so when people, have honest issues with credit default swaps and the misuse of the mortgage industry to the point of crisis, the manipulation of banks borrowing money without paying interest on it and forcing people downstream to pay more than their fair share of interest to make money off money they made out of thin air. That's a genuine concern. But if your only response is is saying bankster, and and the idea is you're not helping. You're not changing anything. You're not actually making a difference in the circumstance. You're just sort of abstractly complaining and then going about your business using your ATM to buy purchases and shoring up the industry that you think is rife with nothing but criminals. And so you don't care enough to buy stock in your bank. If use that as one, I wouldn't have stock in banks because they're evil organizations. Well, then you don't get a say in their shareholders. And so the only people that have say is the shareholders that would buy into banks, and those end up being the people who are okay with almost anything that they do. So that it's important. That's exactly right, Carl. Banks and corporations are not inherently evil. Neither is fire unless it's unregulated. That's exactly right. And I do think the Jimmy Dores and the Susan Sarandons of the world do more damage than good. To some degree, know it, come from a self-righteous, embittered point of view, and don't really offer solutions except for the kind of rubber stamp of saying single payer, but not actually saying how do we get to single payer other than a single vote that should just do it. And again, that's where I talk about how revolution as we know it in modern a democratic society is the 6-minute abs of democracy. They don't really care about how you get there. The exercise and nutrition that it requires to get to a healthy body. They just want their stomach stapled because they're tired of waiting for it. And unfortunately, a lot of people fold in behind them. There are as many people who believe that idea as believe that you can buy a lap band and that will be a permanent solution to your your health concerns. And it's not. Majority of the time, it would better suit you not just on a health level, but on a psychological level to solve that physical problem through constant care. And that's why democracy takes constant gardening. It takes an honest, it's why I do this show, and it's why I do it for free. It's why I do it every, I don't charge, the station doesn't pay me. I don't do it for that reason. I don't, I appreciate you guys when you've been kicking in with that, and we certainly use things like Patreon to a limited extent, but I don't really dive in and kind of hammer that home the way a lot of people do to kind of make it my, a secondary industry for myself. I'm basically trying to break even with the technology I end up buying to do the show, but even then I don't care, because the point is, this is to me an act of citizenry, right? What do you do every week when if there's not a march, if there's not a phone call to be made over a specific bill or whatever? What do you do to further the soundness of democracy? And this is one of my ways of doing it. Giving Trump hell on Twitter is another one. Doing Concert for America is another way where I use my particular talents for a specific cause. Last week it was the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Sierra Club. That's what the Atlanta shows were for. So who just said that? I just saw that. Kevin, fix the mind, the body will follow. There's absolutely something to that. And there is a point where, yes, you can get a lap band or you can get a surgery or a pill to fix an ongoing health concern, and sometimes that is the only way. But if it isn't the only way, and the way to solve it is through nutrition and better exercise and taking better care of yourself, drinking more water, what have you, I was laughing at Rocky Mountain Mike. If you can solve it through a behavior change, then you actually you have more of a perspective change. You don't just solve it. You have a different way of looking at the world. You see life and human interaction and society through the lens of every day I work to make myself better. I do a little bit of reading. I do a little bit of exercise. I eat better. I focus on what I'm doing. I don't burden myself overtly just to be self-righteously in pain all the time. I'm not flagellating my religious beliefs by whacking myself with a whip or something. Though if that's your thing, knock yourself out. But I am caretaking my principles on a daily basis. That's very different than having a solution that comes like that, right? And so, that's an important part that I think is lost when you fall into the extremities. And what the Russian propaganda machine has been trying to do, and it's not any secret at all, is drive everybody into those extremes. Appeal to our emotional laziness, make us fight amongst ourselves in a violent sense, make us act out so that all sides being equal, everybody's violent, everybody's a mess, and allow for this both-siderism to basically chew democracy apart. Because you can't argue for your side without having, going, well, everybody does blah, blah, blah. And then, putting people in positions, where they're fomented and financed by those very trolls and sources so that they push that idea that it doesn't matter who's in charge. Democracy is a destitute system from the start. And as much as I love George Carlin, I don't buy that for 1 second. I'll push back on that forever, and you can call me, old-fashioned in that regard. But I think that's intellectually and philosophically lazy, and I'm not going to fall for it. So there you go. That's my diatribe for the week. And it's kind of becoming a recurring theme, but I do think it's like needs to be said. Well said, Tom. I can't look past 2018 in reality now. It's too much with Trump and his dumpster fire of our presidency. I agree. Louise Mensch is a troll for the right wing. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think initially, I think she falls into sort of the zone of Nicole Wallace, where they believed in a certain belief in conservatism, and they fought for that, or they believe that idea, and this guy ain't that, so they can't broom him fast enough. We've been bothered by Carlin's line that only responsible society is to sit back and watch the freak show. I agree. I think he's doing that from a comedically exploitive way. There's I think Carlin's methodology at a certain point was be a spoiler, and that was the most outside view. Now it's a fairly common view. I don't know that if Carlin was still alive, he would still make that same joke, because I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that once that became kind of a prevailing myth, he would push against that myth just to fight the idea of having the myth in the first place, right? And the idea that both sides do it is garbage, and anybody who's selling that to you is doing it on is manipulating. So Louise has a history of saying racist, anti-LGBT, anti-Semitic things, though. How? Yeah, I don't doubt it. But my feeling is, in those situations, is if your ethics change, and you have a come to Jesus moment in those regards, I allow you that. If you've moved away from that because you've seen it's toxic. Ariana Huffington was married to a right-wing politician who, was basically running and, lost I think the California Senate seat that he was going for. And she stood by him through all this as effectively his Ivanka Trump in a lot of ways. And eventually ended up opening up Huffington Post. And I have my problems with Huffington Post, but it's certainly not that it exists in whole cloth. Hartman's on one note, so annoying I practically do his show for him. Yeah, his point of view is economic justice and that breakdown. I don't think that's wrong. But again, after a while, if you're only pointing out the problem with it instead of the solution, which I think I'm really glad that that both Ike and I think it was David brought up really good theoretical points of like how to solve some of this stuff in the show. But I don't know. Ariana's husband ran on an anti-LGBT platform, and she was fine with him during that whole time, till he came out as gay, and they got a divorce, and then she opens Huffington Post. I'm just saying, I give people room to fix themselves. And again, I think it was I forget who was quoting Jiminy Cricket, but they were basically saying, "I'll take truth wherever I can find it." I will only, Louis Mensch or any of those other people, I'll only take it as far as as it lives up to reality. I'm not looking to her or anybody for my moral compass. And I am my own moral compass, and will be so, and I will defend it. And if I find myself in a morally indefensible position, then I will change my position. And after I change my position, I should be responsible for any ill I caused, but not responsible for a morality or a philosophy I no longer have. I give everybody room to do that. And it's important. And if somebody's just, playing people for a sucker and changing them, whatever, that'll be found out soon enough. Let's see. I personally like to see you try. Do you have public sealing experience much? One note, though, there's nothing wrong with that card. Public sealing experience much. I don't know what that means. Okay. I don't agree with separating economic and social justice. Well, see, I have a problem with the phrase social justice to some degree, because there is no such social justice. There is justice. There is people getting the same rights because of their gender or skin color or their transgender being, is not social justice. It's justice. Social justice sounds like a personality argument. The phrase itself I find kind of weak and goofy compared to what it's purporting to try and solve. Social justice sounds like everybody being nice to everyone, which is not something you can legislate anyways. But justice in and of itself is absolutely something you can legislate. And I do think there is room to legislate violent or hate speech. There's room to legislate violent outbursts and activities. I certainly think there's room to legislate marching with a Nazi flag not being technically free speech because it was a country we were at war with. Same thing with a Confederate flag. I think there's an argument to be made there that doesn't qualify as speech any more than trying to, letting a Chinese army march in the street would be legal as American free speech. I mean, there's reasons why there's, that stuff. But social justice itself, to me, is a personality-based movement, not a legal-based movement. And I attribute that the same way that when Republicans talk about education, okay, so when we talk about funding for education, like, I think the right thing to do is to take funding for public education away from cities and localities and make it equal across the country, because you're not responsible for what country you are born, state you're born into. Okay, you're just because your parents are born you're born to poor parents in a poor area doesn't mean that's your fault, and therefore you deserve as much of a school as anybody born in a rich neighborhood, right? So all of those things should be equal because of the Equal Protection Clause for every citizen in the United States. Your public education should be the same quality across the board and as high as we could possibly make it, right? Seems pretty simple, right? I went from Kentucky, Franklin County High School in Frankfort, Kentucky, to New Trier High School in Chicago and Winnetka. These schools are night and day. The funding internally in both Franklin County and worse, Frankfort High, because that was the quote-unquote black school in Frankfort, the funding was so off-kilter when I was there And I haven't visited in a long time, so I don't know if it's the same, but I don't doubt that there's still that parity. It certainly goes across state lines. But New Trier was like a university campus, and it was paid for by the local state, the taxes of a very nice neighborhood. That's unfair. I think Frankfort, Kentucky deserves a New Trier. I don't think it lowers the bar. I think our responsibility is to find the best high schools in this country and make all the rest of them match it, because it wouldn't cost that much to do it. Period. End of story. The teachers deserve a better paycheck, and that could be a federally based system. Okay, so understand that that's where I'm coming from. That's a justice level thing. You can solve that. When you talk to Republicans about that, their answer is parents should be more involved. You hear that all the time. Parents need to be more involved. And that's true. But so what? I can't legislate that, right? I literally cannot make a law where parents have to be more involved with their kids, or the kid will get punished, or the parents get a fine or something. Because there's no way to create a legally binding system that makes parents get involved, right? And oftentimes you're right, Carl, there aren't parents, right? You can't make that a law. You can encourage it, you can do billboards, you can try to do funding for parent groups, all that stuff, but you cannot legislate that. And so when Republicans bring it up, when they're talking about school, basically they're advocating for something outside their control as legislators. They're basically saying it's not my job, I'm not worried about it. And that's bullshit. The justice of that is, how do we make the maximum amount of funding and quality of teachers available to every student, no matter where they were born, to who they were born to? Okay, that's justice. The social justice aspect is we need to get parents more involved, which is completely out of our control on a legislative or material level. You cannot make a government program that makes people care, right? The same thing is, and again, institutional racism is another great example of that. The wording itself is wrong. You need to, brooming racists out of the government is an act of justice. People who are racists, who are behaving in a way that eliminate people's rights because of their race, their religion, their status as an LGBT member of society, those people are violating the law. That's justice. It's not social justice. It's not making that person who's in that thing like gay people, or like black people, or like Hispanic people, or like Asian people, what have you. It's justice. They need to leave. And if they're caught limiting people's rights, they go to jail for that. Bias is personal, and you can't legislate it. You cannot legislate bias out of people. You can only legislate or change their ability to act on that bias and create structures wherein they can have those biases and eventually learn to get past them, but you cannot legislate bias out of a human being. It's not possible. It is the same thing as saying we're going to bring democracy to Iraq at the barrel of a gun. You can't do it. Yeah, Joe Arpaio. There is no way I'm going to legislate the bias out of that man. But what you can do is get him out of office. Make sure he stays out of office. Right? I think the languaging of the social justice movement is in and of itself detrimental to the very cause. Yes, that's right, Jen Becky. You can take actions like justice reform. That's exactly right. But that's not social justice. That's justice. The minute you make it social justice, you make it appear as preferential, emotionally based. Drug sentencing, great idea. The elimination of bias, again, not social justice. Simply justice. We should treat all. I think we should treat all non-selling drug offenders as addicts and with treatment, and any violent crimes they commit while on those things are mitigatory based on that and the elimination of that factor. If you took out alcohol out of the system, which is what they tried to do in prohibition, this is basically what you're trying to do is moral prohibition. You're trying to do morally what they tried to do with alcohol in the 20s. That was a social justice movement. Prohibition was a social justice movement. It did not solve the problem. War on drugs to some degree. What is a better name for wanting equality for everyone then? It does not require a name. As a matter of fact, it's more important to simply refer to it as justice, as constitutional equality. When you create a secondary name, what you allow them to do is you allow the right wing to own the constitutional end of it. You hand it over. And this is my own personal opinion about this, and you can disagree with me, but justice is the word. I believe in it's like giving up the word freedom to the right wing. We, as Democrats and liberals and progressives, gave the word freedom to the right wing all during the Bush years, handed it off, when in reality, they're not for freedom. They're certainly not for the freedom for you to be however you want to be if they have a problem with it. They're not for the freedom of minorities to vote in equal measure as well-to-do white people in Wisconsin and Ohio and Florida. They actively take measures against it. So they're not for freedom. They're not for gay people to get married because it's against a particular form of their religious beliefs. Not even all of their religious beliefs. Not all. The Episcopalians were okay with it, and they turned on them. So they're not for freedom. Don't tell me they're for freedom, but we allowed them. We allowed them to usurp the word freedom. And the same thing goes with, and again, you don't even have to tack the word equal, just justice. We want justice for everyone. We want equal protection under the law is the wording of the Constitution, and it is enough. What if someone only focuses on economic issues as a panacea? I don't care. If it actually functionally does it, I can't morally change them. So all I'm saying, if they're going to focus on that, then if I'm saying that's just words that they're using to get elected, then I know that. Then what I'm saying is I would rather have them bullshit me and lie about their beliefs. And it doesn't mean I think it's good that the Jeff Sessions are. I'm just saying that you know where that guy's coming from, and instead of giving him free reign to use the Constitution or freedom and family values as rallying cries, because you give those words away to them because social justice became an important word. I just happen to think that the phrase social justice has not served the equality movement at all. I think the actions of the people in the social justice movement have. I think the marches have. But the phrases, the words, the name of it has not moved the ball at all. And ends up saying that what we're really trying to do is not legislate equality in terms of a constitutional level, but you've got to learn to like gay people before you pass the test. And there are just tons of people who aren't, but they would, in a libertarian sense, move on and stop trying to torment and persecute gay people. And I would rather take that legislative step first and trust that on a generational level we would get closer to caring for gay people and over time than try to legislate people to emotionally behave how I want them to behave and say the buzzwords and know that I'm literally allow myself to be comforted by the fact that I'm being bullshitted by somebody that doesn't feel that way. Let's see. I'm saying it won't work without also focusing on justice issues like sentencing. I agree, but that's not social justice. That's just justice. Saying that a black person being pulled over for the same crime as a white person and being treated differently is not social justice. It's justice. You know what I'm saying? And making it social justice sounds like it's malleable. It sounds like it's softer than it is. When that happens, that's not socially unjust. It's unjust. It is a violation of the law. So, that's, I appreciate Jen Becky. I saw that you said justice, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not willing to give up what I think is right and just for people by softening it with a with a linguistic modifier. Yeah, and that cop, Billy, that you're talking about, who lost his job and George is trying to come around, that's not a social justice moment. That's justice. That is when someone is not carrying out their job as a police officer and protecting people across the... he's not a bot. Power Surge has been with us a little bit. He's all right. Let's see. Someone tweeted it would be better if they were actually fired for killing Max, not just talking about it. I agree. But I also know from a law enforcement perspective, there's a reason why they circle the wagons, because they bury their dead all the time. And, and some of these guys get stuck in a war mentality. And they do give their cops a benefit of the doubt. And they arguably should be able to give cops the benefit of the doubt if they're acting within an honorable framework. If cops, as a generalized rule, it's the same problem that Catholic priests have, effectively. That if Catholic priests hadn't had the pederasty issue that they've had for decades, they would be the moral authority you would go to. But now you can't trust them because they acted against that. And police are finding themselves in the same situation. And not all, because of the pederasty problem, not all Catholic priests are involved in this. So you do have this, am I willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater, when it comes to Catholic priests? Cops are in the same zone. They occupy a position of honor in the country for a specific purpose that not a lot of people want to do. They dedicate their lives to it. It can cost their lives. And bad cops endanger those people. Yeah, Billy, I was in fear for my life, so I shot him. Part of the job is being in fear for your life. One of my relatives, who's in law enforcement, was involved in a situation where they had a shooting of a man who was trying to run over them in a car. He had fired on officers, managed to get to his vehicle, was out of ammunition, apparently, and decided he would just run over the police. And they shot him. And he, while shot, drove into a house and knocked it off its foundation. He hit it so hard with his car. That's how fast he was driving at the police. He survived the shooting. And he's going to be tried. But they had to issue a statement for shooting an unarmed man to make sure that it was really clear what was going on. And if this had come out secondarily, it would have looked like a guy was driving away and the cops just fired into the car. But they were straight up. He was straight up trying to run them down. And the idea is, if you're willing to kill, this is why we give people higher sentencing for killing police officers, because the idea is if you're willing to kill a police officer, you're certainly more comfortable killing a citizen. And if you're acting in a violent way towards a police officer, the odds are, if you get free and run away, you've got no problem shooting a citizen. It's the argument, cops are protected under the same envelope in some ways as hate crimes, because the idea is that if you shoot if Dave is a black guy and you have a problem with Dave because he's Dave, not because he's black, that's just a murder in and of itself. But if your reason for shooting Dave, who you never even knew his name, was because he was black, that means you're just as much a danger to every black person around. So with you in society, the rest of the entire black populace can't go about their lives without fear that you will run up on them and do them ill. And so therefore, hate crimes require a specific level of sentencing and a specific level of seriousness, different from attacking a single person. Same thing with attacking law enforcement. They use that as the idea that there are called like tier violent offenders. If you're willing to act violently towards a police officer, you're way more apt to beat your wife to death. And that's often the case. And the reality is, violent crime has been going down in the United States for decades because we took lead out of the gas. And in following that, there are a lot of cops out there who don't see the action they signed up for and get bored and pent up and stressed and all kinds of stuff. Or they think every next car they pull over could be their last because they hear about a buddy that was shot or whatever. My cousin had to attend a funeral for a police officer who was shot down as they were busting in on this guy who'd been he was on the run. He'd been it was I think a cold case they had solved, and they finally found this guy, and he opened fire when they came after him. And they announced who they were. They were all wearing all the proper names. You couldn't tell that they weren't police officers. There was no second guessing. And in going to get this guy, who had murdered a couple of people and was wanted for 2 others, he killed one of the police officers. And all those police officers watched that funeral on a closed-circuit police feed that shows them when cops that have been killed in the line of duty, so that if they can't be there, they can pay their respects. And they all have that in their mind as they're walking up to a car. And it doesn't forgive the ones who are obviously racist, and who obviously act out that way. So, but again, that deserves to be part of the conversation. And again, when a cop busts somebody for racist reasons and or bigoted or prejudiced reasons, when they lose their job or they get arrested or all that kind of stuff, they should, but not for social justice reasons, for justice reasons, because it's not because they're acting on a second-class group of citizenry. It's because they are acting on citizens of the United States, which is illegal. It is a violation of their oath, and it is against the Constitution. That's justice. It's not social justice. It's not you gotta like me. It's that you gotta treat me like everybody else, whether you like me or not. The same thing applies to free speech. And it's important. It's important in a democracy to protect those kind of things, as ugly as they can be. And again, you can't legislate somebody to like you. But you can legislate how they treat you if they're in a position of power. And that should always be first. The marchers on Selma and the Civil Rights Act that came of it was an effective law that protected people in terms of actual justice, their rights under the law, going to school, the right to vote, those kind of things. The stuff that somebody has to live up to even if they don't like you. That's so much more important. Oh, sorry. Hi, Jordan. I apologize. Thank you, Natalie, for pointing that out. Yeah. I need cops to be able to emotionally handle their job. Yeah, well, you're going to need a bigger support structure because they're pretty good with it. They get after-action debriefings, and they get psychological stuff after they've shot somebody, after they've been through that, after they've almost been run over by a car and had to open fire on somebody who was running out of a house after they, had, beat their girlfriend nearly to death, had fired on police officers out the window, managed to make their car, and then they almost run over one of my family members, and the news will be that police opened fire on an unarmed man just because he was fleeing the scene. You have to take that into effect. You have to give that leeway so that when you do come for the cops that are genuinely racist and are genuinely acting on a bias that they have, you're not saying, well, you just don't like cops. You think the whole thing is blah, blah, blah. Because when you start talking about institutional racism or institutional bigotry, you write off everybody within that organization who's actually trying to push for being better at it. You go, and it's softer. You don't go, we've got bigots in the department. We got to get these guys out of here. That's not institutional racism. That's bigots who have molded their way into the organization. That doesn't mean the institution in and of itself is that way. And we will not allow it to be so. We will fight for justice for everyone. So, anyways, I'm going on a diatribe. Apologize. This is something I really care very much about. And it's because, that's the preservation of democracy with all its uncomfortable parts. So I would not consider myself a social justice warrior or use the term social justice to describe myself, because that's not the only kind of justice I believe in, and I tend to try and focus on justice in and of itself so that we don't lose that word to the right the way we lost freedom to them. Right now the system to be made there. Oops, I think I froze. Oops, lost my live stream. Hold on, let's try to go back on. Bounced off. Got bounced. I think sorry. I'm back. I think I'm back. Am I back? Yeah. Sorry, it dropped off. I think it's because I'm in a hotel. Somewhere about noon, they turn off the internet and turn it back on to get people to re-sign on again. So that often happens. Michael A. Wood, former Baltimore cop, exposes wrongdoings. Racism is the issue of our time, in my view. It affects everything. I agree, but you can't let it own everyone. There is a pervasive group of racists in our country that have held on for a very long time. They are a scourge within every organization they are in. There is still referential law in the books and lack of protection for people, especially in voting rights, that needs to be handled. But I would rather legislate people out of their racist reactions than try to talk people out of their racist beliefs. Because I don't really think I can do anything. All you can do is convince a lip service out of certain Republicans over time. And I would rather have lip service than not, but it's still, that doesn't guarantee the laws there. The only way you can actually, make these kind of things is to change, and Jen Becky, that's a great point, referencing institutional policies that overwhelmingly negatively affect marginalized communities. I would change the languaging on that to say that is there is an unequal application of the law, which is a violation of the Constitution. Yeah, it is possible to make it illegal to deny anyone their right to vote. You could pass a law that would be protected under the Constitution and would stand up to Supreme Court scrutiny, that would say you cannot limit the number of voting machines in certain communities. And if you try, you go to jail. That's the law I want on the books. You will never be able to outlaw Nazis being able to march in a country that still has free speech. You could outlaw them being able to fly the Nazi flag or wear the symbol, because you can say that is actually an enemy combatant symbol, but you can't outlaw them marching and saying whatever they want. Yelling "Jews will not replace us." That's just there. I agree, Carl. We do need a national right to vote, and I think that should. Germany does, because they were an internal political party, right? And I think that could work because we were at war with them. And it doesn't exist it's not the Germanic flag. It's not like they carry around the flag, the current flag of Germany, right? That was the flag of a war party. Effectively, it's the same as the Confederate flag in Germany in a lot of ways, right? I'm thinking I'm black because of my name. Black Lives Matter despite my whiteness because I have eyes and common sense. Right. And, again, Black Lives Matter, for example, has been is a great organization. I think the name is great. There's a variant number of human beings in it because it's not like a political party. So some people take BLM and change it into whatever they want and bridge it out broader into covering other stuff besides its initial point, which was to deal with the fact that black people were being shot by police officers unarmed in really questionable circumstances, and softening its mandate or saying it's just cops in general waters down its effectiveness. In the same way that I think like the LGBT, the rainbow flag, adding brown and black to it as if brown and black people weren't automatically included makes it more exclusory, makes it more bifurcated than inclusive. I think that's, people can disagree about that, but I thought that was odd. Like the rainbow flag did encompass people of color. And if it needed to be added, that was a problem within the gay community, not without the acceptance of that. The rainbow flag was supposed to represent everyone based on its, the entire spectrum of the rainbow or whatever, that kind of idea. So adding those after the fact seemed like, oh, but we're not. But again, you can't legislate that. That's a matter of opinion and liking and all that kind of stuff. What you can do is guarantee people equal protection under the law. And that's the most important thing. We'll get to them liking it later. We'll get to once you get to the point where people can't fire people for being gay, then you get to the point where there's gay people in the office and you go, oh yeah, I like him, I like her. They're great at their job. They do, I don't mind them at all. And then that cuts against the bigotry that they hold in their heart. That comes second. Anyone saying white lives matter is uneducated their own cause, which they don't have one. Because they don't. Okay. Years ago, I ran for union president. My local black members voted for me because they saw Jackson, thought I was black. Oh, that happens. I got booked on the Monday, Mo Better Mondays at the Improv because they thought Sparks was a black name back in the 90s when I was, before I was known. So I understand that happens, and it shouldn't matter. Comedy should have a level of universality and expression, where you should be able to see, like increasingly the comedy world, unfortunately, is very much bifurcated. There are very few crossover performers, who can perform for everybody. But anyways, the point is, I think it's important. I'm not a fan of the term social justice because I think it acts as if social justice is somehow different from legal justice and legal protection. It is somehow less. Yeah. Yes, before I was famous. This is true. Yeah, and before Talk Soup. Yeah, in 96, 97 especially. So, my belief is you fight to constantly move the ball down the field, you take advantages of moments where you can really do great leaps forward. But if you're not, and everything's just incremental, every step in a ladder is important. And if you're building a ladder, you don't go, I only need the top rung and the bottom rung. Everything else in the middle is just establishment bullshit, It's wrong. It just is. And it's disingenuous. Houston matters and all cities matter, but Houston is the only city not being treated as if it does. Black lives equals black lives right now. Okay. I'm uncomfortable being singled out here, Al. Yeah, the one area is that I think we can say is that kings in and of themselves are in a special class and don't deserve all the constitutional protections, dealing with the fact that we're a democracy, a federalist democracy, and they are monarchical. So I don't think, I'm just saying. But they get special dispensation from the Lord, so I think it probably balances it out. My liege, good to have you again. All right, I'm going to sign off. It's I'm glad you guys stuck around. I really appreciate it. I love having these post conversations with you guys. So I like this is and just some food for thought, rotate around. Not saying I'm right about it, but this is something I genuinely feel because I want social change and movement. I mean, you can look at the work I've done in my life, and I will hold it up to anybody. From, you know, bugging people in the Senate about the GI Bill when it came through, obviously being an activist about gay marriage, and you know, HIV, working with Project Angel Food, you know, back in the day before anybody knew or gave a crap who I was, you know, this stuff matters to me. And I don't mind if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes, because we still get that 1 step, you know? And it matters. It fucking well matters. And this idea that it only counts if we make giant leaps forward so I can pat myself on the back and go back to sleep is a little bit pathetic at times. And it angers me. Yeah, if you focus on... That's right, Ginger. Focus on justice, social change follows. I mean, the best example is the DACA people versus Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The president, when Obama caught hell for insisting that Don't Ask, Don't Tell be repealed by Congress, and it took longer. People were mad at him about it. They accused him of being anti-gay. They, accused him of not moving fast enough, and then Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And now gay people can serve openly. It was an act of Congress. When it came to DACA, people weren't willing to wait for that change. They put political pressure on. They didn't want to go through the process that we went through with gay marriage and Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So he did it with because of pressure from immigrants' rights organizations. He did it via executive order, and now we're in danger of that being overturned. When the argument was, because people were turning on Obama so quickly, accusing him of all sorts of nearly violent attitude towards the cause, that ultimately, to prove he wasn't, and to try to do something quickly enough for everybody, he signed off on DACA as an executive order. And now what's happening? It's being, it's in danger of being shredded. And if the quote unquote social justice movement had been more patient with it and less about vilifying the president, at the time when he was trying to make progress on it and going after Congress and the Senate, then ultimately, I really believe DACA would have been law already. I don't know if we would have gotten comprehensive immigration reform, but that little piece could have passed, by God. And this idea that, and I'm glad that a lot of what Trump's garbage is also being done by, executive order, because it will be undone just as quickly. But that stuff still has meaning. It still affects lives. But he can tear up DACA right now because people were less patient with Obama than they could have been. I truly believe that. Because I think that's something he wanted. I think he actually thought at some point, happy birthday, Seattle Suzuki. I think he actually wanted a comprehensive immigration reform, and it would have passed the House if Mitch McConnell hadn't said from day one, we're not doing anything to support this president. But did progressives who attacked this circumstance attack the Republicans? No, they went after Obama at every turn. The seeds of single payer are in the Affordable Care Act. But did you hear that from, Bernie supporters and even though Obama wasn't running? No, he was vilified. Bill Press's book dismissed everything Obama did effectively as not enough. Not recognizing that the stuff he was patient enough and worked hard on is the stuff that's lasting. And our caller was even saying he's going to have a hell of a time dismissing, they're going to have a hell of a time getting rid of the Affordable Care Act because they're going to get sued if they try. Right. But I would argue Bill Press's book is an act of social justice warrior type in print. that if it's not enough and it's not fast enough, it's garbage and it's to be dismissed. And I won't stand for it in my own circle, and I'll fight back against it everywhere I see it. And this idea that somehow, if it doesn't happen overnight, it's not good, or that, we're better off with Trump destroying this country and the rule of law than getting Hillary in there as some sort of, this idea that she's some sort of a corporate dem that's only going to marginally move things forward, that she's only for a $12 minimum wage, federal minimum wage, not a $15 yet, even though she thinks $12 is the best way to get to $15. That's not even an argument. She didn't say $15 right out of the gate, so screw her. She's a corporate shill. End of story, blah, blah, blah. And it's wrong. It's flat out wrong. And it doesn't help. And all of the great steps that have been made have been incremental and through legislative legal acts dealing with the rights of individuals, rights of people. The Civil Rights Act was a law that allowed people to go to school, allowed people to protection in their jobs. Whether it was acted on is another thing. That's what comes next. But the law has to be there. And to blame incrementalism for the unequal application of the law, to the detriment of the laws that you want to get passed, even getting through, by putting people in charge who wouldn't even enact the laws you want as a way of revenge on some system you imagine. Honestly, those people can go to hell. It's just wrong, and I don't buy it. And I'll call the Young Turks out when they do it for it. I will push back against the Bernie bros, the Bernie people who think that it's their way or the highway. I won't buy it. Yeah, Bison Lawyer. We crucified Bill Clinton for don't ask, don't tell now, but it was the only step forward he could get at the time. That meant that was the only way to get gay people to be left alone to serve. You weren't going to get open serving at all. And you were this close to, people were getting chucked out of the service left and right. People were getting prison terms up to that point. It's a joke in stripes, for Christ's sake. They ask them if they're gay. I think I don't even have it there. I can play. But the point is, incremental is how stuff happens. And if you're in this all or nothing BS, you're like somebody who's never played a football video game before, doing nothing but Hail Mary passes all the goddamn time. The conservatives were controlling what they could. They were pushing back. Clinton was dogged by conspiracy the same way Obama was the entire time he was president. So yes. So and the social justice warriors will write off Clinton's don't ask, don't tell as if it was a crime against gay people when it was a mitigatory step to protect them. Was it the solution? No. It was stitches. It was surgery. But it wasn't the cure. Because they didn't have a vaccine for that kind of conservative BS at the time. It takes time to grow. Obama was even famously, and you look at Axelrod's book, he says he was for gay marriage before he ran, but Axelrod and everybody was saying, look, if you say you're for it, you'll never get in, and the guy who's against it will get in and guarantee it'll never happen. So you got to mitigate your message and say, yes, I believe it, I'm for, I believe marriage is between man and woman, but I believe it's for, I'm for civil unions or whatever. You mitigate your language on a political level to get into office so that you can actually enact it so you eventually get what you want. But this idea that that most social justice organizations warriors with this like hard line stance that if you don't talk like we talk, instantly you're the enemy, is damaging to the cause of the very people they're trying to protect. It just is. I wish it wasn't, but it is. So anyways, I love you guys, and I appreciate you listening to my diatribe. I had to get it off my chest. Had to go there. I'll see you guys next Saturday, and of course through the week. I might do a special kind of Labor Day hop online, midday, just kind of say hi and talk a little bit about like workers' rights and labor and that kind of stuff and unions. A little bit, because I don't think that gets talked about enough. So it might just be like a nice hour. We'll just talk about that kind of thing. But I genuinely, and I hope you don't have to buy into what I'm saying. I'm not all or nothing in how I believe things. These are my principles that I'm expressing to you. Okay, but I hope that in some ways it inspires you to be more, practical in your application of your true beliefs, so that it actually makes a difference. We can all feel great being self-righteous and screaming in an echo chamber, but if it doesn't do anything, it was impotent and empty. Speaking of impotent and empty, this week I request that you tweet Donald Trump the most mocking picture you can find of him. Find one that's really unflattering that he'll hate and tweet it to him. With something like "Hey, looking good" or something like that. You can't. I don't think you can tag him in pictures. They turned that off because he was hating it. But mockery is the best way to handle an egomaniac. I know, because I am one. Although I'm an egomaniac based on skill, not based on body type or anything like that. So it's a different thing. I'm a harder nut to crack. But if you're based on your daddy's boy and you're born rich, you're an easy target for mockery. So make some jokes at the man's expense. It will help, because apparently he's miserable right now, and it has 100% to do with the fact that he's being investigated and people are ridiculing him. If you get mad at him, he likes it. He thinks same thing with the alt-right. If you get angry with them, they think they're doing it right. They look at you and they go, "Oh, you're triggered," and all that kind of stuff. But if you dismiss them with a joke, they fall apart. So there you go. Enjoy that. Use that. Be well. Let me know if it works, how you feel about it. By the amazing Schneiderman. Yeah, no pardons there. That's right. That's right. No state pardons available. And the entire Trump organization they're up to their hips in dirty Putin money, and so are the Senate and House Republicans as well. We'll talk about that some more. That Dallas News story that I retweeted. So yeah, my goal is to get blocked by Trump. That's absolutely right. The goal we should have is to be blocked by him without swearing too overtly, or no violence, nothing to, cheers later, Jordan. Fighting for justice. That's right. And just hold to that, because they can't argue with that. Social justice they can mock. It sounds like nothing. But fighting for justice is like, look, this is justice. This is right. This isn't the Constitution. I believe in the constitutional rights, the equal protection of the law. I believe in freedom for gay people. I believe in freedom for minorities. I believe in freedom for people who are poor and grow up in a place where the education system isn't very good or whatever. I believe in the freedom of them to have the right to a public education that's on par with anybody in the country, because we're all equal Americans. That kind of thing. Own those words. Don't bifurcate them or soften them with words that are easily mocked, like social. It means nothing. And there is no war in social justice. In teaching people to love gay people, or teaching people to love minorities, understand people of a different religious belief, which is what social justice really is. There is no war. There can be no war. War is antithetical to social justice. That's like Christian soldier. It's the same bullshit. Sounds like G to me. Yeah, that's right. I have been studying a lot, Julie, and you're right. There's no such thing as a warrior for social justice. It's a war-based word borrow that's intentionally macho to create a sound, kind of hard, butch force behind something. Yeah. Can't force belief. You can regulate behavior. That's right. So you regulate the behavior legally. That's justice. And then beliefs you change through your own behavior. You make it hard for them to argue that you're out to get them. You don't act violently towards them. You are accepting of their belief systems to the extent that they don't affect you. It's like Christians. It's the lesson Christians need to learn. Like all these Christians are like pro-life and pro-death penalty, and they're great until a child is born. Then they could give two shits if it's getting fed. I'm not convinced that they're Christian beliefs. If they would lead more people to Christianity. Christianity has been shrinking, as has Catholicism, for years, because the example given by Christians of, the majority of Christians in America, unfortunately, is the negative evangelical Joel Osteen, I'll get mine, screw you. Jesus was just talking out of the side of his mouth when he said, love thy neighbor and love thy enemy. If you could live up to that, holy shit, people would flock to Christianity again. So there you go. You guys are awesome. If you can't love gay people or black people, find one gay person or black person and learn to love that individual, or at least yeah, that's right. And that's how it will happen. But if you're always spitting vitriol in their face because you recognize that their problem, instead of, and I've seen some great video and appearances by people, confronting these people with love and too much understanding. So they, the way to really get to these people is to say, I know you're hurting, man. They're not your problem. I know you're hurting. I know you're hurting. I'm sorry. Sorry you feel like they're the reason you hurt, but they're not. And they hurt just like you do sometimes. But I'm sorry you're hurt. I'm sorry you feel so hurt you have to stand out here and say this stuff. I'm sorry that someone has told you that Jews are the reason you don't have a job. I'm sorry that you feel that way. Now, you may not feel that is true, but that'll have more of an effect on them than, screaming Nazi at them, because they're ready for that. They're hoping for that. That proves that what they're doing is working. We talk about how the president needs to apologize to Native Americans, and we need to, and I agree with that. I think that would be a great act. I think the apology for slavery, those kind of things, very helpful. That's to some degree a layup and not hard. That's why it's frustrating it hasn't been done more often. But if you do that with the people that you hate, if you're capable of holding it together, you may not change them, but if you can't change that person, you're often talking at the people past them, the people who aren't as convinced as the tip of the spear, the people who are there as more followers, who you will throw a monkey wrench in their computive ability. They'll try to hate, but they're like, hey man, that guy was actually cool. Knowing the people on the beat is part of what helps eliminate abuse. If you know people as people, just not as potential perps, you treat them better and can de-escalate. Absolutely. Need info on Sanders-Harris bill for Medicare for all. How would it be implemented? Yeah, I want to have Jackie on. I'm going to see if she can come in next weekend and actually come to my place and be on the show, because I've been talking about getting her on the Superior podcast as well. So I hope next week I might have her like a dual hit, if not scheduling. I don't know what her schedule is, so I'm going to reach out for her. Absolutely. Medicare for all is great, but I believe a better system would be allowing states to create their own single-payer systems and allow those single-payer systems to be bought across state lines, so that instead of having one federal system that if it fails big, you could have Washington State and Vermont and California and all these other states have them, all profits from them go to help the state, and they mitigate their how profitable they are, or what kind of, how much they use for infrastructure and payout and all that kind of stuff on a much more kind of governmental level, where it's not they're seeking to pay off shareholders and whatnot and need a 20% growth every year, right? And ultimately, if one works better than the other, you can go, you know what, I was on the Vermont system or whatever, but they're doing something great in Washington State, and they're way faster payouts. They're way more open-minded about life extension technologies or health stuff. Or whatever. They cover acupuncture and Vermont doesn't, or whatever the thing is that makes it better for you, but isn't regulated by a single federal government. Where if the Republicans take over it, they can undermine it because they hate it, right? As long as you could legally buy across state lines and buy into these, different states, those states, most of them blue, have an impetus for having a really well-functioning system because there's a market of exchange, that they have to compete on, too. So it's a good balance between the profitability for the state and making sure that people want to buy into it and it's more functional for them on a level. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's actually the big deal. Yeah, that would actually work better than anything. Because if they got in there, it's like Social Security. They'll borrow money from it. They'll try to undermine it. They think it shouldn't be there. But in the blue states, it's a pretty consistent Democratic force in there that thinks that it's a good idea, and it would give us even more, impetus to keep those state houses strong. Look at what they've done to the ACA. Yeah, look what they're trying to do. So a federal system that's in and of itself that way, whereas once you implement being able to buy across state lines into state-run single-payer systems, you can't really undo that without a huge financial burden to the citizenry. And I think Republicans would be, it would argue against their states' rights philosophy. It would give a lot of ground and cover and make it more salvageable, and would also keep us from robbing that, funding from it to pay for military, which is what happened to Social Security. Yes, I was very fired up. But anyways, you guys are awesome. I got to go. Wow, I already went 20 minutes over that. So you guys, thank you so much. Thanks for the super chat today, all the support. Love it. You guys have been so great to me, and I'm glad you could be here. And if you're in the Seattle area, come see me. I'm in Huntsville, Alabama. You don't have to drive over there to see it. But if you're in the area, come there. October 20th, I'm in at the Maryland Theater in what's the name of that town or whatever? I'll put that up soon. The theater in Maryland is, and we'll find it one moment. Maryland Theater. There you go. In Hagerstown, Maryland, October 20th. One show. It's a theater show, so I'm trying to do my best to sell it out so I can move more into theaters and away from doing as many clubs and wearing out my voice by having to do 2 shows a night. The more theaters I'm able to do, the better. So I'm really pushing for that one. So if you could spread that around, Maryland Theater, Hagerstown, Maryland, October 20th. I'll post that as an event on because I'm supposed to wait until after Labor Day to post all these. So Monday these will be up on my Facebook page. If you guys would push them along, that would be lovely. Anyways, thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye. See you later. Bye.